Chapter 25-27. Luqing was like a barbarian bull that was advancing on a barren land. He was advancing by leaps and bounds in the densely packed enemy formation. Wherever he went, the enemy would fall down in droves. There was no room for resistance. Luqing was like a wild bull that was advancing on a barren land. In an instant, a huge hole was opened up in the solid defensive line. Luqing pointed his sword and the heavenly armament pavilion charged forward. No one had the slightest bit of hesitation. They surged through the hole that Luqing had opened up. Their morale rose again. The enemy general was also a veteran of the battlefield. Even in the face of such a disadvantageous situation, he was still able to maintain his footing. He hurriedly mobilized his troops, intending to block this opening and turn the tide. However, his face was solemn. Clearly, he did not have much confidence in his heart. His eyes couldn't help but look towards the top of the mountain, the place where the solitary great emperor was standing. This was already the 100th time that he had looked at that position since the start of the battle. The enemy's true strongest combat power, the solitary great emperor, had yet to make a move. His defensive line had already been completely torn apart. Luckily, there were still the 8 experts who tried their best to block the enemy. The extent of damage to the defensive line wasn't too great. As long as he used the lives of his men to fill the gap, there was still a chance to block it back. However, if the solitary great emperor were to make a move at this time, everything would be over. However, whatever he was afraid of would happen. Just when this general was muttering in his heart, he turned his head to look again. However, he realized that the solitary great emperor was no longer on the top of the mountain. How could Luqing not think of something that he could think of? That general's heart tightened, and he hurriedly focused all his attention on searching for traces of Luqing. But to his surprise, he discovered that a black dragon had appeared in the sky above the battlefield at an unparalleled speed, and it was shooting toward this side. In midair, after this black dragon had flown for a period of time, a rumbling sound of thunder could be heard. The solitary great emperor has made a move. This general's heart turned cold. Is everything over? He had seen the solitary great emperor's move before. It was even more powerful than this guy who had broken through the defense of his army. That was a sharp and violent attack. Even now, his scalp still felt numb when he thought about it. Now, he saw the soaring black dragon again. Stop him with all your strength. That general shouted, "Don't let the solitary emperor break through the defense line." However, his warning was too late. Or it should be said that this warning was meaningless. The soldiers at the front were already powerless. That's because the experts under his command, those big Western Sky's highest level, most outstanding high-level Saint experts. Luqing had already used up all of his energy. He hadn't recovered yet. Under such circumstances, how could they hold their ground against a solitary emperor who was conserving his strength? That was simply impossible. A sword across the sky to the peak. Luqing's cold words were indifferent but resounding. On the big Western Sky's side, everyone who heard this sentence had their scalps tighten. On the other hand, the heavenly armament pavilion was cheering. In the sky, the black dragon sword had already turned into a curved sword energy. It stretched across the sky, emitting millions of cold sword lights. Life, death, victory, and defeat are all gone in a blink of an eye. Luqing once again let out a whistling sound. He had already flown to the sky above the enemy's formation. His thin and tall figure made a rapid whirlwind in the sky. Where is the soulmate in the world? When I want to look back, I've already forgotten my feelings. A vast sword light appeared on the horizon, mixed with boundless and vast melancholy. It sprinkled down like an inescapable net. This time, Luqing didn't use the chaotic heaven sword. Rather, he used his own signature move, the unruffled sword. That desolate mood instantly pervaded the entire battlefield. All of the heavenly armament pavilion soldiers realized at the same time, the solitary emperor had already personally arrived on the battlefield, personally taking action. At this moment, the morale was boosted to the peak. This was practically an unimaginable matter. Kill. Charge. Luqing took the lead, taking the lead in charging into the enemy's formation. Splitting the waves, he rapidly advanced forward. The defense line that had just closed was once again torn apart. This time, the tear was several times larger than before. At this moment, Gu Duxing's figure had already advanced no less than 3,000 feet into the enemy's formation. Everywhere he passed, he was within a range of 500 feet. Not a single enemy was left alive. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion's army cheered. It was almost as if they were in a state of extreme excitement. The entire army charged forward, their flags fluttering in the wind. Like a tsunami, the enemy general closed his eyes in pain. The outcome was set. Retreat. The vanguard army desperately obstructed the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's troops. The rear army quickly retreat. Do not linger. When this order was issued, the general's heart was bleeding. Because this order meant that the army that he had trained for hundreds of thousands of years, as the main force, would be completely destroyed in this battle. But if they didn't retreat, the battle situation had already deteriorated to this point. If they forced themselves to continue fighting, the only outcome would be complete annihilation. There was no such thing as luck. Right now, the vanguard army and the rear army were already pinned down by the enemy. There was no way for them to retreat. This was the only way to save 1/3 of their troops and retreat. The battlefield was filled with war cries. Gu Duxing let out a long howl. Wherever his sword pointed, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's army of 1,000,000 instantly flooded the enemy camp. The only regret was that the enemy's rear army still retreated in the end. The enemy general's decision worked in the end and avoided the misfortune of being completely wiped out. When things can't be done, he immediately cut off his wrist. Good method, good decision. Gu Miaoling stood at the top of the mountain and watched the last part of the Heavenly Army of Berserk Sword retreat in an orderly manner. She couldn't help but sigh. The leader of the Heavenly Army of Berserk Sword is truly a talented commander. Once he saw that things couldn't be done, he made a prompt decision without any hesitation. He was willing to sacrifice and give up. This is the talent of a general. A rare talent of a general. With a flash of sword light, Gu Duxing landed beside her and said indifferently, "He is indeed a talent of a general. Under such circumstances, he can still make such a decision with a clear mind. It is indeed commendable. I don't need this kind of talent. What I need is the kind of talent who dares to be impulsive, not such a calm and cold-blooded talent." Gu Duxing said indifferently, if he was willing to fight to the death just now, he might have been able to rescue half of the army. At least, he had more than a 50% chance of success. But he chose to give up. Now, although he saved 1/3 of the army, this 1/3 of the combat power is the weakest. The general has no fighting spirit, and the soldiers have no fighting spirit. Going back like this is no different from being completely wiped out. If he could save some of the elites of the front army, with those people, this army could still be a fighting force and have a chance to dominate the world again. But now, even if he is given another 10 million people, he won't be able to reach that level. If such a situation happens on the Heavenly Devil battlefield, the consequences will be even more unimaginable. So, I don't need this kind of talent. Gu Duxing said solemnly. Gu Miaoling smiled and said, "This kind of thing depends on the person. You also said that there was only a 50% chance of success in the situation just now. The odds of both sides were 50 to 50. The consequence of forcibly saving the elites of the front army may be complete annihilation. Rather than fighting for half or less, it is better to save the last 1/3 of the army and make a comeback one day. Everyone has their own ideas, and there is really no way to make a decision." She smiled lightly. "Actually, it is not that you can't see the wisdom of this general's decision, and it is also not that you can't see the benefits of doing so. It is that you have never had the experience of abandoning your subordinates or brothers to escape alone. You have never even thought of doing so. This is your persistence, so you have never seen such a person who dares to give up in your eyes. This is your strength, but it is also your weakness." Gu Duxing was silent for a moment and said, "I understand what you mean, but I always think that such a person can become a famous general, but he will never become a hero." Gu Miaoling shook her head. As the saying goes, the times create heroes. In this world, there are not many famous generals, and heroes are even fewer. Why force it? No, to fight against the extraterrestrial demons, we need heroes. Only heroes can inspire fighting spirit. This kind of person is not very useful. Gu Duxing still insisted on his view. Seeing that Gu Duxing still insisted on his view, Gu Miaoling shook her head helplessly. She was more or less disappointed, but more gratified. Gu Duxing had a kind of unbending aura, and it was so strong from the beginning to the end. In his eyes, he would never tolerate even the slightest bit of sand. This was a natural-born hero. That was why he was so dismissive of the practice of abandoning his comrades. Even if he knew that this was the right thing to do, and that this was the most valuable thing to do, he would still not admit it. He would still despise it and still insist on his view. Because Gu Duxing himself would never do such a thing and would never approve of such a practice. This silly brother. Gu Miaoling's spring water-like eyes looked at Gu Duxing, and she sighed happily in her heart. Really silly to the point of being cute. It's just that, with this kind of temper, if he goes to the extraterrestrial demon battlefield, heroes, as expected, Gu Miaoling started to worry about the future war. The big Western Skies army was defeated like a landslide. Heavenly Emperor Duxing's heavenly armament pavilion pushed forward with irresistible force. Everywhere it passed, it collapsed like ice and swept away by the wind. Heavenly Emperor Maniac Sword Wu Yequang finally decided that perhaps he really should personally lead the army? Perhaps only this way could he reverse the war situation, reverse the declining trend. And just as he made this decision, Heavenly Emperor Wei Mo Qingqing, who was in clear sky heaven, also made the decision to personally lead the army into battle at almost the same time. The army of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion that Ao Shiyun belonged to had also developed like wildfire. Under the planning of Yi Zue and Yi Shiyu, the two incompetent strategists, as well as the support of the N amount of accurate intelligence from the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department, Ao Shiyun's army had also advanced triumphantly. The Heavenly Army of Wei was also retreating in defeat. Chapter 25-28. And Ao Shiyun was the same. He had to lead the troops in every battle. The sovereign king great emperor personally went to battle. Leading the troops was naturally an incomparably strong motivation. At the very least, if you had battle merits, no one would dare to hide it. Perhaps after a battle, they would be stepping on the path to success. And Green Firmament's side just happened to lack this point. The difference in morale and fighting heart was enough to affect the entire battle situation. Facing the increasingly grim situation, Mo Qingqing could only personally go to battle. And it was also until now that suddenly, a matter that shocked the entire Heaven Imperial Court was finally exposed. Or rather, it was really gathered together. A terrifying fact was displayed in front of everyone. And that was, when Xie Danqiong, this black cloud sky jade flower great emperor, started his army was called Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Dong Wushang, this great emperor Wushang's army was also called Heavenly Armament Pavilion. If the similarity of the names of the two companies could be explained as a coincidence, then, Gu Duxing, another new great emperor's army was actually also called Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Could this still be a coincidence? If it was a coincidence or a chance encounter, then Ao Shiyun, this evil cloud great emperor's army was actually also called Heavenly Armament Pavilion. When it was confirmed that a coincidence was no longer a coincidence, all coincidences became inevitable. Therefore, everyone quickly thought about what other forces and organizations had similar names. And the easiest one to think of was none other than Chu Yang's Heavenly Armament Pavilion, which had now developed into an overwhelming force in Demon Emperor Heaven. Thus, everyone who was paying attention sucked in a breath of cold air. Could it be that these people were actually in the same group? Regardless of whether it was Maniac Sword Heavenly Emperor Wu Yequang's Heavenly Court Discussion Hall or Wei Heavenly Emperor's Heavenly Court Discussion Hall, when someone raised this question, the entire place fell silent. Everyone was so shocked by this shocking news that they broke out in cold sweat. Could it be that all the Heavenly Armament Pavilions were actually an organization? A branch force that extended out from a force? One had to know that according to the news from other worlds, there seemed to be a self-proclaimed Wolf Emperor and Wolf Emperor, whose real name was Luo Kadi, leading a team called Heavenly Armament Pavilion. And this guy had now developed to the point where he could almost go against the local heavenly court. Also, in another world where the flames of war had yet to spread, there seemed to be a guy called the Lonesome Emperor. The team under his command was also called the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Their strength and scale were comparable to the Heavenly Armament Pavilion of the Wolf Emperor and the Wolf Emperor. Apart from that, there was also a fellow called the Phoenix Emperor. His name was Rui Butong, and the team he led was also called Heavenly Armament Pavilion. In total, there were 8 Heavenly Armament Pavilions. They were evenly distributed among the 8 heavens and earth. After integrating all the information, everyone felt that their hearts were about to stop beating from the shock. What was going on? What kind of force was this? Wasn't their goal a little too big? Moreover, there were 2 Heavenly Armament Pavilions. At present, they had already confirmed the fact that they had occupied 2 parts of the world. Gu Duxing and Ao Shiyun were also close to success. Could it be that the ultimate goal of this emerging power was to unify the world? Moreover, it was progressing in an effective manner. However, they didn't know that there was another Heavenly Armament Pavilion. And that was Tantan's Heavenly Armament Pavilion. That was equally terrifying and even more terrifying. It was even worse than the previous ones. Because that was the true and scrupulous means to achieve one's goal. It was just that Tantan had always been extremely lazy and didn't form a large force. However, his subordinates were all top-notch experts. What they didn't know even more was that the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department that monopolized the Heavenly Imperial Court's intelligence network was also a Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Your Majesty, the situation in front of us is already very grim. It has even reached the point of life and death. Heavenly Emperor Wu Wei's Heavenly Court. A white-haired old man was almost weeping bitterly. Now, with just the power of our heavens and earth, I'm afraid that we are already powerless to reverse the situation. It will be difficult to extinguish this huge force. We must unite with the other heavenly emperors and join forces to eliminate this force. Otherwise, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion will be established, and the day of our destruction will not be far away. Mo Qingqing was not her usual graceful and dignified self. She was insufferably arrogant and paced back and forth anxiously. She muttered, "Whose team is this? Who is secretly presiding over all of this? How could an ordinary person do something so extravagant? Who was the one who came up with such a grand plan? Who is it?" The final goal is actually to unify the Heavenly Imperial Court? Mo Qingqing's eyes shone with extreme worry. Immediately contact the Eastern Royal Heaven's Eastern Emperor, the Demon Emperor, the Heavenly Demon Empress, and the Extreme Heaven's Saint Monarch. Immediately. Mo Qingqing immediately ordered. At the same time, Wu Yequang, the Frenzied Sword Heavenly Emperor, was also doing the same thing. Since he couldn't rely on his own strength to deal with the danger, he naturally had to find help, and it was the most powerful helpers. None of the great emperors who could become great emperors were short-sighted people. The current situation was unprecedentedly dangerous, so they naturally had to work together to overcome this difficulty. However, the first person to contact was the Demon Emperor Heaven. After the unique Heavenly Court's communication device connected, the person who appeared on the mirror wasn't the female Demon Empress that they were looking forward to. Instead, it was a handsome young man wearing an imperial robe. "I am the Demon Emperor Heaven's Supreme Demon Ningning. May I ask what your Majesty Frenzied Sword Heavenly Emperor needs?" Yao Ningning said in a very stylish manner. "May I ask where the Demon Empress is now?" Wu Yequang asked. "Mother has gone out. She has some small matters to deal with. She is not in the palace for now," Yao Ningning said. "May I ask where the Demon Empress has gone?" "I have urgent matters here and need to contact the Demon Empress as soon as possible," Wu Yequang quickly asked. This time, Wu Yequang was really anxious. Under normal circumstances, he shouldn't have said such impatient words no matter what. "I don't know about this either." Yao Ningning sighed in melancholy. Mother has always been secretive when she does things. As her son, I won't ask and I don't dare to ask. This was a normal situation. As long as he thought about the demon empress's temper, Wu Yequang expressed that he completely understood this explanation. However, understanding was one thing, and reality was another. Then, did the demon empress say when she would return? Wu Yequang didn't give up and continued to ask. Your Majesty, I'll tell you the truth. Before Imperial Mother left, she had solemnly said that the matter she had to deal with this time was very difficult. I'm afraid that she might not be able to return in 3 to 5 years. Yao Ningning's truth caused Wu Yequang's vision to darken. What? She won't return in 3 to 5 years? I'm already on fire here. Don't talk about 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 months, or even 3 to 5 days is too long. If the demon empress doesn't return, then who is in charge of the demon emperor heaven now? Wu Yequang asked. At this moment, Wu Yequang was truly crazy. He actually asked a very, very low-standard question. Yao Ningning rolled her eyes at this question. Can't you see that I'm standing right in front of you? You actually asked such a stupid question? Are you really a heavenly emperor of a generation? I despise you from the bottom of my heart. Mother once said that when she is not around, I will be in charge of everything, Yao Ningning said indifferently. At this moment, Wu Yequang wished he could slap himself. The demon empress was obviously training this demon emperor Tian Tai. He actually asked such a stupid question. He really deserved to be beaten up. This emperor made a slip of the tongue. I hope that your highness will not take offense. Something big has happened recently. Wu Yequang very patiently explained the situation from beginning to end and the pros and cons. He then said, May I ask your highness, if the demon emperor heaven were to send troops to help, the demon emperor heaven will definitely not send troops. Yao Ningning interrupted. Mother is not here. How can I send troops to other worlds without permission? This is a huge crime. Even if I am the demon emperor heaven, I don't dare to make decisions without permission. Wu Yequang was so angry that his breath was stuck in his throat. But now the Heaven Imperial Court is facing a crisis of life and death. Do you know the seriousness of this matter? Yao Ningning curled her lips. I'm really sorry, Your Majesty Mad Sword Heavenly Emperor. I'm really small and have narrow shoulders. I can't bear such a huge responsibility. Wu Yequang rolled his eyes in anger. What kind of idiot was this demon emperor heaven's emperor heaven? He was about to unify the Heaven Imperial Court, and this guy was actually still saying witty things. Besides, the one who is in a war right now is your big Western Sky. This matter may be related to the Western Sky's crisis of life and death, but what does it have to do with my demon emperor heaven? Yao Ningning said lazily. Our demon emperor heaven is very peaceful. Black lines immediately appeared on Wu Yequang's old face. Was there anyone who talked like that? What did he mean by my demon emperor heaven is very peaceful? Could it be that this little guy didn't understand the logic of sharing glory and being interdependent? Your Majesty, you must know that your demon emperor heaven also has an organization codenamed Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Wu Yequang's voice was heavy. Also, according to what I know, the power of this organization is already quite huge. When Wu Yequang said this, Yao Ningning actually couldn't help but be pleased with herself. She immediately beamed with joy and said with a chuckle, I know this, I know it too well. Demon Emperor Heaven's Heavenly Armament Pavilion's Pavilion Master Chu Yang is my sworn brother. His several wives are all my sisters-in-law. What do I not know about their matters? When these words that were close to presenting a treasure came out, the Mad Sword Heavenly Emperor was directly petrified. What? Your sworn brother? Your sisters-in-law? You even know about their matters. In front of the supreme power between heaven and earth, what did sworn brothers count for? This guy actually believed it so naively. Know about it? What the hell do you know about? With this kind of trash, if he wasn't replaced by others, then that would really be strange. Chapter 25-29. Dear nephew, as your mother's old friend, as your elder, I think I have to remind you, this matter concerns life and death, the overall situation of the world. Supreme power is only a matter of time. A single mistake and everything will be gone. This brotherhood. Wu Yequang was full of earnest advice. If they really trick me. Yao Ningning raised his head and said, I'm willing to be tricked. The implication was, what can you do about it? Virtuous nephew? Virtuous nephew my ass. Who is your virtuous nephew? Why didn't I know when you became my mother's old friend? Bah! Is there still such a way to climb the social ladder? Wu Yequang was so provoked by a certain elder's words that he almost choked. He was so angry that his face turned green, and his lips trembled. He said angrily, Good. Looks like there's no need for us to continue talking. Yao Ningning said, it's rare that we have the same thoughts. Goodbye, no, it's best that we never meet again. Wu Yequang had a kind of sick feeling that he had come to eat shit himself. He couldn't help but say, you will regret it, you will definitely regret it. It would have been better if he didn't say this. Once he said this, Yao Ningning instantly exploded. Yao Ningning was young and full of vigor. Originally, he was proud of the achievements of his brothers. Now that he was being talked about like this, how could he still hold it in? He raised his eyebrows and said, Bah, I'm not afraid to tell you that I definitely won't regret it. Just now, when I told you to never meet again, I wasn't just saying it. Not only is Demon Emperor Heaven's Heavenly Armament Pavilion's Chu Yang my brother, Ink Cloud Sky's Jasper Flower Emperor is also my brother, Big Brother Extreme Heaven Wushang is also my brother. Big Western Sky's Solitary Emperor is also my brother, and Green Sky's Evil Cloud Emperor, all of them are. Wait for death, you old bastard. A certain elder's unceasing words didn't seem to have finished yet. Opposite him, Maniac Sword Heavenly Emperor Wu Yequang's face had already turned green. He stared at Yao Ningning, and then neatly cut off the communication. The crystal flickered, and then it turned black. Yao Ningning flew into a rage. This old bastard actually dared to cut off my communication first. This can't be tolerated. Put me through again. Connect it. I haven't finished speaking. On the side, Demon Emperor Heaven's 2 7-star guards looked at the sky. He rolled his eyes and pretended not to hear anything. You've almost angered the other party to death on the spot, and you're actually blaming the other party for cutting off the communication with you. Don't cut it off. Could it be that I'm waiting for you to anger me to death? People should have a lower limit of shamelessness, shouldn't they? She actually wanted to pick up the call again and scold the other party. She had never seen such an unforgiving person. Yao Ningning cursed, what kind of person is this? He's also a celestial emperor. He only spoke halfway. He didn't cut off the conversation politely. What kind of quality was that? He was still the celestial emperor of a generation, but he didn't even have this basic quality. He deserved to step down. This time, we will never see each other again. Go to hell, you old bastard. Black lines appeared on everyone's forehead. Grandpa, you're too weird. No matter what, he's still a heavenly emperor. You're cursing him behind his back like that. That's not right. He didn't say it behind her back. He had clearly said it to her face just now. It was too weird. A certain grandpa was still spitting saliva everywhere. He stomped his feet and roared, wanting to ask to pick up the call, but the communication finally lit up again. Before the figure really came out, Yao Ningning had already jumped over, spitting saliva everywhere. Fuck, what do you mean by this? What the fuck do you mean? You dare to cut off the conversation before it's even finished. Do you still have any basic quality? Do you still have that little bit of grace? To think that you're a celestial emperor. The crystal lit up completely. The one who appeared was Heavenly Emperor Wei, Mo Qingqing, with a head full of fog and eyes full of confusion and an ashen face. This round of scolding was too much for him to bear. He had to take it all. At this moment, His Highness, who was at a loss and staring at Demon Emperor Heaven, clearly didn't understand what was going on at all. Yao Ningning realized that the image in the crystal seemed to have changed. She also let out an ah, and was similarly dumbfounded. Cough, cough, cough. Behind him, the 2 7-star guards coughed continuously. So it's Heavenly Emperor Wei. Yao Ningning's face was red. She coughed dryly and said, just now. Cough, cough. May I ask what's the matter, Your Highness? Why are you so free today? It was really hard to explain, so he could only change the topic with a sentence. Heavenly Emperor Wei also didn't have time to talk about this with him. Now that the situation was dangerous and the situation was urgent, he went straight to the point. May I ask if Her Highness, the Demon Empress, is here? A sentence to change the topic. Therefore, Heavenly Emperor Wei suffered the same thing as Heavenly Emperor Maniac Sword just now. However, the difference was, Heavenly Emperor Wei, Mo Qingqing, didn't get angry. This seemed very unusual. Furthermore, not only did she not get angry, she even asked with interest, "You said, those are your brothers? Then why are your brothers doing this? You definitely know what your brothers are thinking. Could it be that you want to dominate the world? Unify the Heaven Imperial Court? That's why you made such a big fuss? Bah, you're looking down on people too much," Yao Ningning said with some disdain. "How are we as vulgar as you think? The so-called world domination is not worth mentioning at all in the eyes of our brothers. Then why are you doing this? There has to be something, right?" Heavenly Emperor Wei, Mo Qingqing, asked in deep thought. When this question was mentioned, Yao Ningning suddenly became serious. "Of course we have our purpose. Tell me about it." Heavenly Emperor Wei was interested and even raised his eyebrows. One had to know that the location of the communication now was in Heavenly Emperor Wu Wei's meeting hall. Although only Heavenly Emperor Wu Wei's image was in front of the crystal, the other military officials were all listening to this conversation at the side. And Yao Ningning, who was on the other side, didn't know at all that there were actually so many people in front of her. "Since Your Highness asked, let me ask Heavenly Emperor Wu Wei a few questions in return." Yao Ningning's young face was full of righteousness. Back then, when the extraterrestrial demons invaded Purple Cloud Heavens, what was your Green Cloud Heavens doing? Where is your Green Cloud Heavens army? Where is your Heavenly Emperor Wei? Yao Ningning's question made Heavenly Emperor Wu Wei's face bitter. For a moment, he didn't reply. Back then, the Battle of Purple Cloud Heavens had been going on for many years. If the ordinary people thought that the world was still peaceful, then so be it. After all, the distance was too far. However, as a Heavenly Emperor, your news can't really be so closed off, right? Yao Ningning asked. Heavenly Emperor Wu Wei sighed deeply. He looked up to the sky and closed his eyes, but still didn't speak. He didn't make any excuses. In the end, Purple Cloud Heavens was completely annihilated. Heavenly Emperor Wu Wei died heroically. The entire Purple Cloud Heavens fell into the hands of the extraterrestrial demons. Yao Ningning's voice was indifferent, and her words were sharp. "At that time, where were you? What were you doing? Now, the extraterrestrial demons are restless. There are even many extraterrestrial demons who have sneaked into the Heaven Imperial Court as spies. Seeing that a great war that concerns the future of the Heaven Imperial Court and the common people is about to break out, what are you doing?" Yao Ningning's voice was heavy. "We all understand that this war is absolutely unavoidable. We are already destined to fight to the death. If the war breaks out, according to your performance last time, how can we be at ease to fight against the extraterrestrial demons under your leadership? Therefore, we have to fight the extraterrestrial demons ourselves. We have to annihilate this despicable race, reclaim Purple Cloud Heavens, and avenge Heavenly Emperor Wu Wei. Therefore, we have to eliminate those hidden dangers and malignant tumors that may affect the future war before this war breaks out. We have to do our best to gather the power of the Heaven Imperial Court in the hands of our own people. Therefore, these brothers of mine are planning in secret. When the time is ripe, they will break out brazenly, launch a rebellion, and change the dynasty." Yao Ningning sneered. "If you think that these brothers are all greedy for power, then you are gravely mistaken. If they want to be the ruler of a country, these brothers of mine can do it at any time. If that's all they have, they wouldn't have ascended to the Heaven Imperial Court at all. And they wouldn't be so obsessed with martial arts. Once the extraterrestrial demons are annihilated, who would care about this mere position of Heavenly Emperor? To put it bluntly, you so-called Heavenly Emperors, including that high and mighty Lord Saint of the Heaven Imperial Court, are not trusted by us. The calamity of the extraterrestrial demons has already happened once. Hundreds of millions of people have been plunged into misery and suffering. Tens of millions of territories have fallen into the hands of the enemy, and all of you have been watching with folded arms. If the war breaks out again, we can no longer continue to fight under your leadership. How can we be at ease leaving our backs to people like you? Yao Ningning said indifferently, we only want to win this war. As long as the Heaven Imperial Court is safe. As long as Purple Cloud Heavens, which Zhongguang has lost. The so-called goal is so pure and simple. Heavenly Emperor Wei, Mo Qingqing, let out a long sigh and cut off the communication between both parties. Yao Ningning was filled with righteous indignation and was talking excitedly, but he didn't expect that before he could finish, the communication was cut off unilaterally again. He instantly flew into a rage. What quality? What quality? All of you are playing this trick and not even letting me finish my words. What quality is this? And this is a heavenly emperor, spit on me. The two 7-star guards sighed in their hearts and were very sympathetic. He is a dignified heavenly emperor, and he actually didn't get angry after being lectured by you, a little brat, for so long. That's already not easy enough. You actually don't know how to be content. Humans, could it be that shamelessness really has no bottom line? Qing Xiaotian. Heavenly Emperor Wei, Mo Qingqing, cut off the communication but was silent for a long time before he finally said indifferently, you all understand, right? Chapter 25-30. Finally, someone said, Your Majesty, what this demon emperor Heavenly Emperor said might not be the truth. Maybe, all of you are experts. All of you are elites with hundreds of thousands of years of experience. Whether it is cultivation or experience, you are all outstanding in this world. Mo Qingqing stood with her hands behind her back and said indifferently, could it be that you can't even tell the truth from a lie? Can that demon emperor Heavenly Emperor lie to you? It's more like it the other way around. Everyone lowered their heads and fell into silence again. Mo Qingqing sneered. Xie Danxiong, Dong Wushang, Chu Yang, Gu Duxing, GMO, Luo Kadi, Ao Xiun, Rui Badong. These young people, including that most lawless Tantan, these young people, each one of them is only in their 20s, but each one of them has rushed to the peak of the Saint Realm. She said, with such aptitude, such geniuses, would they really care about the position of Heavenly Emperor? Do they really value it? In just over 20 years, they have already walked a path that others would take over 1,000,000 years to complete. What will their future be like? If they continue to walk down, how far can they go? No one could answer this question of Mo Qingqing's. Yes, how far could these young people go? How long would their future path be? It was impossible to predict. However, one thing that could be confirmed now was, the so-called limit of the Heaven Imperial Court was definitely not the limit of these young people. If you were them, would you, because of this so-called position of Heavenly Emperor? Would you just sit there for such a long time and give up on continuing to walk forward? Would you give up on the granary and only take a grain? Mo Qingqing looked at the military officials present with indifferent eyes. Everyone lowered their heads together. If there was a longer path to walk, who would stay in one place or one region? Limiting oneself? If it were me, I wouldn't either. Mo Qingqing sighed sincerely. Then there was a long silence. Your Majesty, we had our reasons for not sending out troops back then. A general said anxiously with a pale face. No matter what the reasons were, the final result was that Zihao died. Zixiao heavens fell, and we just watched from the side. Mo Qingqing said decisively, even if there were 10,000 reasons or 100,000 reasons. We can't hide the fact that we're just watching from the sidelines. Stealing and quibbling will only make people look down on you even more. Mo Qingqing softly said, don't let people look down on you even more. His words were full of meaning. Stop preparing for war for now, Mo Qingqing said softly, I need to go out. Your Majesty! Everyone turned pale with fright. Going out at this time. Wasn't this too inconsiderate? I'm going to find Ao Shiyun and have a chat with him. Heavenly Emperor Wei, Mo Qingqing, had an indescribable bitterness on her face. Let's decide what to do next. Back then, we blindly maintained our stance. We didn't choose to stand on the side of Shui Leihan and Zihao. However, he also didn't stand on the side of the sage and Yuan Tianjia. We have always been standing, but in name, we are indeed people who belong to the side of the sage. After all, we owed Sage Monarch and Yuan Tianming a huge favor back then. You guys don't know, but when the news that Yuan Tianjia was originally an extraterrestrial demon was exposed, I almost wanted to end my own life. Mo Qingqing let out a bitter laugh. To me, it's a huge humiliation to actually accept the favor of the extraterrestrial demon, no matter if they were aware of it or not. It's a humiliation that can never be washed away. Because of those friendships and favors back then, even if there were other reasons, we were wrong to watch from the sidelines and let the heavenly emperor of Zixiao die in battle. I've already felt guilty about this matter for over 1,000,000 years. Although Zihao is dead, I have to admit that I'm not as good as him, and I'll never be as good as him. I've always been silent and stood on the sidelines until today. But now, we need to pick a side. Mo Qingqing was in a daze for a long time. Suddenly, her voice turned cold as she said word by word, "The choice is to stand on the side of the extraterrestrial demon or the side of the heavenly imperial court." All the military officials were about to speak when Mo Qingqing waved her hand to stop them. Even those demons from the Demon Emperor Heaven know that slaughtering the extraterrestrial demons is a top priority. Don't tell me we're not as good as those demons? As soon as she finished speaking, Mo Qingqing turned around and strode off, leaving behind a hall full of dumbfounded officials. Everyone's heart was filled with bitterness. Perhaps the Demon Emperor Heavenly King was right. There was nothing wrong with us commanding the expeditions to protect the Green Sky Kingdom. But once the war with the extraterrestrial demons really broke out, how many people would be willing to fight under our command? How many people would be at ease to entrust their backs to the army that we lead? Watching from the sidelines back then was still a stain that could never be washed away. Oh, Xiyun frowned and stood on the treetop, somewhat confused. The battle is in full swing now. Why did the Wuwei Heavenly Army suddenly retreat without fighting? Could it be that there's something fishy? Or perhaps there's some hidden conspiracy? At the side, Yizue, who was dressed in black, still had that inexplicable ruthlessness about him. He said calmly, "There must be a trap. We shouldn't act rashly for the time being. Let's observe the situation clearly first." Ao Shiyun nodded in agreement. He looked into the distance proudly and said softly, "No matter the reason or what kind of conspiracy there is, the situation is clear now. Within half a year, I must take down the Green Sky Kingdom. Otherwise, it'll be too late. There's not much time left for us. Preparing the army for war against the extraterrestrial demons." Yizue's eyes suddenly shone with intense hatred. He murmured expectantly, "This day won't be too far away." A fragrant breeze blew over and a lithe and graceful figure leaped up. Ao Shiyun and Yizue frowned at the same time, their expressions strange. "I'm really exhausted." Yi Shiyu raised his hand gently and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He leaned lazily against a tree, looking very delicate and timid. "My legs are sore. There's even a scratch on the skin here. My delicate skin." Ao Shiyun's brows twitched and he spoke before Yizue could. "I'll go ahead and take a look. You take care of him." "Big brother Xing, don't go. I've just arrived. I haven't had a proper chat with you yet." Yi Shiyu's words made Ao Shiyun feel goosebumps all over. It was as if he was fleeing for his life. With a schwa sound, it disappeared. Its speed was so fast that it was truly frightening. Yizue looked at his younger brother. Black lines appeared on his forehead. He lowered his voice and said furiously, "Yi Shiyu, can you not be such a sissy? You should at least leave some dignity for the Yi clan. Do you still know that you're a man?" "Big brother, I was wrong." Yi Shiyu raised his head pitifully and hugged Yizue's thigh as if he was about to cry. "Don't be angry." Yizue was dumbstruck. He heaved a long sigh. He really didn't know what to say. Ever since he came to the Heaven Imperial Court, because of his younger brother's illness, he felt like he was living in an abyss of suffering every day. How embarrassing. How conspicuous. If you continue to speak like this, do you believe that I'll give you a concussion with one slap? Yi Zue threatened fiercely. I won't dare to do it again. I was wrong. Yi Xiu lowered his head with tears in his eyes. He rubbed the hem of his clothes with both hands, looking very pitiful. Oh my God! Yi Zue heaved a long sigh, extremely speechless. He jumped down from the tree and disappeared instantly. He actually followed in Ao Shiyun's footsteps. He escaped without a trace. Ao Shiyun strolled alone in the dense forest. It was just that it wasn't very appropriate to say that this was a dense forest because this was actually still a military camp. To be more precise, it was still a military camp. Ao Shiyun's personal reason was to preserve a dense forest with green mountains, clear waters, and green grass at the most central location. Setting up a camp in the middle of a forest was originally a military taboo. It could easily lead to extremely serious consequences. Just based on the 2 points of concealing the enemy and triggering a fire attack, such a place had long been ruled out as a choice to set up a camp. But it couldn't be helped. Ao Shiyun liked it. It didn't matter even if it didn't conform to the rules if it was something the evil Cloud Great Emperor wanted. Ao Shiyun liked places like this. Therefore, even though it was very troublesome to do so, he would always make such a request. The existence of such a place would definitely add a lot of unnecessary trouble and hidden dangers. Everyone was well aware of this point. It wasn't that no one had ever tried to advise him against it. But since Ao Shiyun insisted, no one could do anything about it. A lot of people thought that he was just putting on airs, but he never explained anything. Just like that, this special thing existed. Because everyone also understood that the current Ao Shiyun did indeed have the right to put on airs. Whether this was his original intention or not, it didn't matter anymore. Only Ao Shiyun himself knew that he liked places like this since he was young. The place he was at must have mountains, rivers, grass, and trees. Only then would he feel comfortable. Only then would he be able to let his entire body and mind truly relax. Green heaven. Ao Shiyun leaned lightly against a tree and looked up at the sky. Looking at the white clouds in the sky and the clear blue sky, he muttered, "Actually, which place in this world isn't green heaven? It's just that mine is always beyond this green heaven. There's always a sky beyond the sky. The sky beyond the sky is even vaster and more vast." Ao Shiyun revealed an inexplicable smile. As his cultivation level continued to increase, the achievements that were originally unreachable and unimaginable were being approached by him step by step. This feeling was born after reaching the heavenly being level. At the beginning, it was like an illusion. It would only appear occasionally. But as his cultivation level increased, this feeling became more and more obvious and real. And this feeling was, I'll surpass the sky sooner or later. Chapter 25-31. Heavenly Emperor Qing Shao. Ah. Ao Shiyun smiled faintly and shook his head slightly. There was a hint of disdain at the corner of his mouth. How can that be my ultimate pursuit? Unexpectedly, a voice suddenly sounded. That voice said softly, "Since Heavenly Emperor Qing Shao is not your ultimate pursuit, then why are you like this?" Ao Shiyun smiled faintly and answered without answering the question, "I have been waiting for you. I originally thought that you wouldn't come." That voice smiled faintly, "Before today I might not come. But now I must come." Ao Shiyun slowly turned around. 1,000 feet away, under the pine tree, stood a person. That person was dressed in bright yellow clothes and wore a crown on his head. He stood with his hands behind his back and his bearing was extraordinary. That pair of eyes was really like the stars in the night sky, shining brightly. His entire person was warm and amiable, but he was imposing without being angry. Naturally, there was a kind of aura of a sovereign overlooking the world with his feet on the ground and his head on the sky. "I am Heavenly Emperor Qing Shao, Mo Qingqing." Heavenly Emperor Qing Shao said with a smile. "I am Ao Shiyun." Ao Shiyun's eyes were filled with admiration. He said, "In this green sky heavens, I believe that other than Heavenly Emperor Wu Wei, there is no one else who can have such an aura of a sovereign overlooking the world. Heavenly Emperor Wu Wei is indeed mighty and extraordinary. Seeing you in person is better than hearing about you. Mo Qingqing shook her head and smiled bitterly. You can force me to this extent, and then you say this sentence, aren't you praising yourself? Seeing you in person is better than hearing about you. After a joke, the two of them laughed at the same time. A pair of strong enemies with clear standpoints met, but the atmosphere was rare and harmonious. Someone outside asked, Your Majesty, what happened? Do you want us to come in? Ao Shiyun said faintly, No need. I am here to discuss something with a friend. You are not to disturb. The person outside said respectfully, Yes. Then it was silent. However, everyone was puzzled. This place had long been designated as a forbidden area, and His Majesty had always been alone inside. Why did a friend come out today? How did that person enter? What kind of friend was this? However, no matter how hard these people racked their brains, they would never have thought that the friend inside was actually the current Lord of Green Firmament. Right now, he was their greatest enemy. Heavenly Emperor Wei, Mo Qingqing. Please have a seat. Ao Shiyun waved his hand casually. Out of nowhere, a jade table and 2 white jade chairs appeared on the ground. On the table, there was a pot of hot tea and 2 teacups that were steaming hot. The fragrance of tea wafted out in spirals, tranquil and tranquil. Simple and elegant. This spatial item of yours is not bad. Heavenly Emperor Wei praised and sat down. Of course, this sentence was just for show. Ao Xie Yun's space ring came from Chu Yang, and it was made for his brothers in the heaven layer. It was indeed not bad in the eyes of ordinary people, but it had to be able to enter the eyes of the dignified heaven layer Imperial Emperor's eyes. That would be a little unworthy of the name. Ao Shiyun smiled and said, Your Majesty Wu Wei Celestial Emperor must have some advice for coming here? Mo Qingqing smiled and said, No. This emperor is here to seek guidance from the evil Cloud Emperor. Ao Shiyun's first sentence was full of courtesy, but it also had the intention of starting a conversation between the two. However, the evil Cloud Emperor's reply was really earth-shattering. It was unexpected. One must know that with his identity and strength, even if Ao Shiyun already had the strength to be on par with him, even if it was not impossible for him to replace him, but to say the 2 words, seek guidance, in front of him, the meaning was very unusual. Ao Shiyun had some doubts in his heart, but he still sat upright and said even more cautiously, Please speak. May I ask the evil Cloud Emperor? Where do you think is the end of your life? Mo Qingqing's face was solemn, and she went straight to the point. Ao Shiyun pondered for a while, and then said lightly, I have always felt that my life has no end. Mo Qingqing was silent for a while about this seemingly boundless boast. She could feel the confidence in Ao Shiyun when he said this. But she was still a little uncertain and confused. Because she asked, What do you think? And Ao Shiyun answered, What do I think? Mo Qingqing pondered for a while, and then continued a little nervously, What do you think? Ao Shiyun pondered and deliberated. Slowly, accompanied by an almost perplexed emotion, he said, That's right, it's just a feeling. Ever since my cultivation reached the level of a heavenly being, I could faintly feel that this world has no end. And my life will inevitably be integrated into the process of chasing the end of this world, so there is no end. Before this, I have never had such a feeling. But from then on, I started to have this feeling. And as my cultivation increased, this feeling became more and more real, and more intense. Ao Shiyun smiled helplessly. Mo Qingqing's face was solemn, but countless perilous waves were suddenly set off in her heart. Feeling. The reason why she was nervous just now was because of these 2 words. Because this feeling was the true direction to guide a martial artist at the peak of his cultivation. This kind of thing could never be explained clearly, but it really existed. But on Ao Shiyun, not only did it really exist, it could even be felt very clearly. This time, Mo Qingqing was silent for a long time, and then said, I don't have such a feeling. I have never had it. I am inferior to you. This sentence was even said with some bitterness. When I reached the high-level saint level, I suddenly had the idea of becoming a heavenly emperor. Not long after, the battle for the position of heavenly emperor appeared. At that time, I told myself that becoming a heavenly emperor who ruled over a part of the world was my goal. In the end, I achieved this goal and became a heavenly emperor, until today. But I have always neglected a fact, and that is, ever since I set this goal for myself, my cultivation reached the peak of the saint level, and then I took another half step forward, reaching the peak of this world's strength level. However, I could not take the other half step no matter what. I knew that there was a road ahead, but it was unattainable. Mo Qingqing's face was a little disappointed, and there was also some jealousy and envy. Because she clearly knew one thing: she had already set an end for her life, and she had already reached the end. But Ao Shiyun did not. This was the fundamental difference between the two of them. The fundamental difference. She had set the highest goal early on, and after achieving it, she would slack because of it. Even if she did not want to slack off, she would not be able to take another step forward. Because in her heart, she always thought, this is the highest achievement of my life. Now that I have completed it, where else can I go? She, a heavenly emperor, was actually inferior to this young man in front of her. My life has an end, but this is endless. The difference between them was obvious. In other words, the Qing Shao Tian in front of you, the position of heavenly emperor that you are fighting for, is just a part of your life experience, and it is even dispensable? Mo Qingqing asked. Ao Shiyun thought for a while, and said affirmatively, yes. Mo Qingqing sighed deeply. Comparing people could really anger people to death. The things that she risked her life to obtain, the things that she swore to protect, and the things that she could do at all costs, so it was just something that others thought was dispensable. What kind of feeling was this? This was too fucking stupid. I understand. After saying these 4 words, Mo Qingqing started to drink tea. But her brows did not relax, and she kept frowning tightly. Her eyes were also filled with deep thoughts, as if there was something important that was very difficult to decide. The atmosphere suddenly became silent. Ao Shiyun was not in a hurry, and he just drank his tea calmly. But at this moment, he did not say a word about the topic that could interest people. He knew that Mo Qingqing's heart probably couldn't tolerate anything anymore. Any words that contained other meanings would cause her thoughts to deviate from what she was thinking about now. Heavenly demons. Extraterrestrial demons. Mo Qingqing finally spoke again. Ao Shiyun still did not speak. Your real goal is actually the extraterrestrial demons, right? Mo Qingqing seemed to be talking to herself. She did not need anyone to answer, because she continued to answer herself, and it is precisely because we want to fight the extraterrestrial demons to eliminate this calamity that you have come to seize the highest authority of the Heaven Imperial Court. Because you don't trust us at all, not at all. You have never thought of fighting with us. It's not that you want to take all the credit, but that you don't trust comrades like us. No, we can't be called comrades at all. You can only trust your own people to take care of your backs, while we, Mo Qingqing sighed sadly, and actually revealed the truth that she was most unwilling to reveal. Yes, we don't believe you. We don't believe you at all. You people can never be our comrade in arms. In fact, in our eyes, you people can never be anyone's comrade. You will only be a blasphemy to the word. Ao Shiyun raised his head slightly, and a few strands of hair fell gently on his forehead. But his sharp gaze shot out from the gaps of his hair. Isn't it? Since the Battle of Purple Cloud Heavens 1,000,000 years ago, Zi Hao, the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud, died, and Purple Cloud Heavens fell, you people will never be trusted again. Who dares to trust you? Although you have tyrannical strength and powerful forces, and are of great help to the battle, unfortunately, we don't care, because we don't dare to care. Although it doesn't sound good, this is the truth, and also the truth. If this is narrow-mindedness, then we would rather be narrow-mindedness. Because you people are no longer qualified for us to trust. We can't afford to lose this battle, and neither can the Heaven Imperial Court. Chapter 25-32. We have to eliminate all the variables and all the hidden dangers that might cause negative effects. Only then can we focus on eliminating the devil plague. We don't want to be betrayed and follow in the footsteps of the Purple Firmament Great Emperor. We're here to eliminate the devil plague, not to be betrayed. Ao Shiyun's gaze became sharper and sharper. Mo Qingqing smiled bitterly and remained silent. For a moment, she felt guilty and didn't dare to look at the young man in front of her. Ao Shiyun looked at Mo Qingqing and suddenly had a strange thought. Could it be that you're not one of the Saint Monarch's people? This question was very straightforward. It could even be said that it was a little childish. Would she tell you the truth if she was one of the Saint Monarch's people? No matter if she was or not, the answer could only be no. As expected, Mo Qingqing immediately replied, "I'm not." He paused for a moment and said, "He has done me a great favor." His tone was very heavy and seemed to be filled with endless melancholy. Ao Shiyun suddenly understood. After a moment of silence, he said word by word, "The Saint Monarch is the myriad saints' true devil." What? What did you say? Mo Qingqing suddenly stood up. Her expression changed drastically and her face turned ashen. It was as if she was a completely different person from before. Ao Shiyun raised his head and looked straight into Mo Qingqing's eyes. He didn't avoid her gaze and said with certainty, "Yes. He's Cloud Lord. Cloud Lord is the new myriad saint's true devil." Mo Qingqing's ashen face suddenly turned deathly pale. There was no trace of blood in it at all. The myriad saint's true devil has long been destroyed. You said that Cloud Lord is the new myriad saint's true devil. What evidence do you have? When Mo Qingqing spoke, her voice was trembling. Mo Qingqing was a celestial emperor after all. For such a situation to occur, it could be seen that her emotions had been shattered by Ao Shiyun's sudden words. She couldn't accept it at all. What kind of status did Ao Shiyun have now? How could he say such nonsense? And Mo Qingqing actually wanted to ask Ao Shiyun for evidence. Everything was clear. Mo Qingqing's mind was in a mess and she was no longer as calm as before. Actually, it wasn't surprising. Even a celestial emperor with 1,000,000 years of cultivation and experience was still a human. People of flesh and blood. Back then, there were only two people who had helped Mo Qingqing. One was Yuan Tianjie, and the other was Cloud Lord. Now, one of them had been proven to be the king of flying devils of the extraterritorial demon realm, and the other was actually the infamous new generation of myriad saints' true devil. Mo Qingqing didn't even know how she should face this world. Evidence? I don't have any evidence to prove my words. Ao Shiyun's words made Mo Qingqing feel even sadder. It was normal for there to be no evidence. With Master Cloud's intelligence, there was no way he would leave behind any flaws that could be used against him. However, without any evidence, Ao Shiyun still dared to say this. But what did it mean? Soon, we will make our move on the myriad saints' true spirit. Ao Shiyun said indifferently, "When the time comes, perhaps only one of us can be present. Of course, it's also possible that both of us can be present at the same time. This choice is yours, not mine." Mo Qingqing nodded. Using silence to answer Ao Shiyun's question was actually reasonable. About the extraterritorial demons. About the position of celestial emperor. About the clear sky heavens. Mo Qingqing then started to talk about these questions. Actually, these were the main reasons why she came here. And these questions allowed Ao Shiyun to truly feel Mo Qingqing's sincerity. He seriously answered them one by one. The conversation between the two lasted for an entire afternoon. In the end, Mo Qingqing stood up and bid farewell. "I haven't asked you yet. How did you find me?" Ao Shiyun asked with a smile. "As a celestial emperor, I have to find someone in my territory. I still have this bit of ability." Mo Qingqing joked. Ao Shiyun didn't understand. When you truly become a celestial emperor, you will know that this is actually a very mysterious aura. When I am in a leader's territory, I will feel like a king descending. And I only need to search for this feeling to be able to find you. Because in your army, everyone in your army will consciously or unconsciously treat you as their heart. And a considerable portion of their mental strength, eyesight, mental strength, and attention will be on your side. When you reach a certain position, you will be able to clearly distinguish this atmosphere. Mo Qingqing smiled. Ao Shiyun was silent for a moment. Then, he said seriously, I've learned something. Indeed, he had learned something. This sentence was equivalent to reminding Ao Shiyun of something that he originally didn't know. It was a very important matter. A foreign territory that was previously unknown to him. At this point, the two of them finally came to an end. Mo Qingqing floated away. A sentence came from the wind. I think, when you all start to deal with the myriad saints' true spirit, I should be there. As a witness. From the moment Mo Qingqing left, the battle between Ao Shiyun's Heavenly Armament Pavilion and Heavenly Emperor Wei Mo Qingqing's Green Sky Heavenly Soldiers finally erupted. Ao Shiyun took charge of the army and deployed the troops. On the other side, Mo Qingqing retracted her intention of personally participating in the battle. She only continued to issue orders. She personally took charge of the army and sent one army after another into the battlefield. The entire battlefield seemed to have turned into a huge meat grinder. However, what the people in the army couldn't understand was, Mo Qingqing actually didn't use any of those who were truly good at fighting and were under Mo Qingqing's direct command. She only used some baffling people. Baffling people naturally had their own baffling aspects. For example, tens of thousands of years ago, there was a certain person who claimed to have traveled thousands of miles to join them. This person was extremely powerful, but no one knew his origins. Another example was someone who had some external connections, officials from other worlds, and so on. Of course, the people who made up the most were the people sent by the Extreme Heaven Saint. To be more precise, they were the officials who came from the Extreme Heaven Saint and had countless connections with the Extreme Heaven Saint. Mo Qingqing's face was calm and indifferent. She didn't explain and didn't respond. Only he knew what was going on inside. There were those who were corrupt officials. There were those who used their power for personal gain. There were those who were simply spies planted by others. There were also those who were others. There were those who didn't do anything. There were those who were very capable but had bad character. There were so many people. That day, Mo Qingqing believed everything that Ao Shiyun said at the first moment. He believed everything. Even he himself felt that this phenomenon was very strange and shocking. Why was this so? More than once, he had wanted to overturn this feeling of his. However, he suddenly realized that he couldn't do it. Perhaps, I'm already too tired. Too tired? After so many years, I still haven't seen the truth. After so many years, I still haven't done what I really want to do. I might as well take a look at how others do it and eventually do it. However, what really made Mo Qingqing make this decision came from his own heart. That was a kind of guilt, as well as a kind of shame. The war had been going on and going on. Ao Shiyun and Mo Qingqing were both counting the time. Both of them understood that in this world, there might be a lot of dregs and obstacles, but it was definitely not as many as they imagined. After all, the vast majority of people were the masses who didn't know the truth. They were just used to following blindly. Although this habit was very annoying, they weren't bad people after all. The most important thing was how to guide them. When the war reached a certain point, they could stop. Whether it was for others or themselves, it was a good thing. In the next few months, although the war was still frequent, the general trend was already very obvious. The Green Sky Empire's official side had already been defeated. Large batches of troops were taken in by Ao Shiyun one after another. With an unstoppable momentum, they rushed toward the Green Sky Empire's last line of defense. Faced with such a situation, the eyes of all the generals of the Green Sky Empire turned red. However, Mo Qingqing was determined not to send these people to battle. Finally, the matter had reached the final juncture where the dagger would be revealed. Mo Qingqing came out with her sword. One battle to decide the victor. The winner is king. This situation was almost a replica of the extreme celestial emperor Zui Wuqing. Ao Shiyun transformed into a golden dragon and soared into the sky. Not long after, a piece of news shook the entire Heaven Imperial Court the moment it exploded. Chu Yang, Mo Tianji and the rest were walking toward the Heavenly Stem Mountain Road. They passed by the last city. Once they left this city, The rest of the journey would only be a stretch of wasteland and continuous mountains. And their destination, the Heavenly Stem Mountain, was hidden in this continuous mountain area. At this very delicate moment, everyone received this explosive news. Even Chu Yang and Emotianji were dumbstruck when they heard this news. The Green Sky Empire changed. The evil Cloud Great Emperor led the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's army and attacked the Heavenly Emperor Wei of the Green Sky Empire. The Heavenly Emperor Wei, in his desperation, proposed a decisive battle. The winner was King Ao Shiyun's Golden Dragon attacked and settled the world in one battle. Mo Qingqing was defeated and was willing to admit defeat. She handed over all the rights of the Green Sky Empire and personally announced to the world that she abdicated. She also helped the evil Cloud Great Emperor to settle the internal affairs of the imperial court. Then, she led her family and wandered the world, disappearing without a trace. At this point, the third heaven and earth of the Heaven Imperial Court also fell into the hands of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Without stopping, Ao Shiyun, who won a great victory, started to reorganize the order of the Green Sky Empire and the three armies. Everything was so swift and decisive, no one thought that the Green Sky Empire would be defeated so quickly. Heavenly Emperor Wei was actually so useless, being completely routed so quickly, suffering a crushing defeat. Chu Yang and Emotianji felt at the same time that there was a trap. And Emotianji immediately let the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department send a secret question directly to Ao Shiyun. Today, a certain idiot just left. The game company sent someone over to drink with him. Chapter 25:33. After the two's sudden banter, the annoyance in everyone's heart instantly dissipated, and they continued on their way. Emotianji walked to Chu Yang's side, and the two of them walked side by side. Obviously, he had something to say. If I were a saint, I would choose such a location to be absolutely secretive and not be discovered by anyone. Then, such a location must not be an open space. Emotianji said. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Continue. For the same reason, it's best to set the location in a place where people rarely go, or at least an extremely desolate place. But this isn't enough, because no matter how desolate it is, it can't block the footsteps of experts. So, I would choose a relatively special place. In this place facing the continent cities, it must be a tall mountain in the clouds. And this tall mountain must give people the feeling of the end of the sky. And Heavenly Stem Mountain fulfills this requirement. I would choose a place similar to the Forest of Horrors, where there must be extremely ferocious spirit beasts, and these spirit beasts can make people flinch. But they don't have great value to people, and it's not easy for people to covet and capture them regardless of the danger. If I were to choose, I wouldn't choose the Forest of Horrors. As Emotianji spoke, Chu Yang nodded. So I think Heavenly Stem Mountain and the Forest of Horrors should be just a cover. In other words, it's a natural shield. If I were to choose, I would choose the back of Heavenly Stem Mountain. Then I would set up an illusory array at the top of the mountain. Only then can it be completely isolated from the world. This would be the side facing the polar sky continent, and there would be at least one other side. In other words, if I were to set up such a secret location, there would definitely be no more than 2 exits and entrances. In fact, the most reliable and safest method would be to have only one entrance. After Emotianji finished, he looked at Chu Yang. Chu Yang completely understood and nodded in agreement. And this mountain is responsible for covering this base. I believe it must be made of special materials. It's definitely not something that ordinary experts can move, lift, or drill through. To get this kind of mountain, firstly, it must be naturally formed, and secondly, it must be strengthened by an array. It's most likely the latter. Emotianji finished. He looked at Chu Yang again. Chu Yang thought for a while and said, "You've thought about this very thoroughly. I don't have anything to add." Emotianji nodded. If this is the case, then this matter will be easy to handle. As long as we can find a way to reinforce the mountain, there is a high chance that we can catch a turtle in a jar. The enemy will be caught in a trap of their own making. Chu Yang said, But before that, we have to search everywhere in the surroundings. We have to find the possible secret entrances and exits, and put an end to all possible variables. Mo Tianji nodded. Exactly. If that's the case, our workload is actually quite large. We have to circle the perimeter in all directions to find this kind of exit before the enemy discovers us. Chu Yang said. Mo Tianji continued to nod. Indeed. Only by finding all of these entrances and exits, and then strictly controlling them and making sure that there were no loopholes, could they start a massacre. And this entrance only required her to stand guard here. Yep, she didn't even need to stay here. She just needed to fill it with undetoxified poison in advance. That's enough. So the absolute domain that Le mentioned just now is actually unnecessary, Mo Tianji said softly. Chu Yang looked at him with a smile. Then why didn't you say so just now? Don't tell me that you only thought of what you said just now. I believe that even you wouldn't believe it. Mo Tianji's facial muscles twitched, and he said lightly, I believe that all good men would do that. How could I fall for lure in front of everyone? Chu Yang looked at him with interest. Mo Tianji looked at him with a magnanimous look, but after a long time, his face finally turned red. He said angrily, What do you mean? Must you force me to say the truth? Don't you know what your sister's temper is like? Chu Yang laughed loudly, looking very pleased. It was too rare to be able to make someone suffer. Chu returned and asked, Big brother, what are you laughing about? Have you thought of a good countermeasure? Chu Yang said, No. Tianji is asking me about you. Just as he said this, Mo Tianji's back was already facing Chu Lu, and he was winking at Chu Yang with a pleading expression. Chu Lu's interest was already piqued. What is he asking about me? Mo Tianji looked as if he was waiting to be judged, and his face was almost as if he had lost his parents. Chu Yang coughed and said, Tianji is asking me, what do you like to eat the most? Are your tastes heavy? And, what do you like about vegetables and meat? Why do you like it? What are the specific reasons? Mo Tianji heaved a long sigh of relief. Chu Lu smiled like a flower and said, This guy is so nosy. Big brother, what did you say? I just told him that. Chu Yang casually made up a story. Chu Lu was still very interested. Then what did he say? He said. Chu Yang was speechless. Then what did you say? Chu Lu was very interested. Chu Yang was also crying for help in his heart. What kind of sister is this? Spare me. Sighed. Why do women like to ask you this? What did he say to you? Then what did you say? Then what was his reaction? Then what did you say? What was the ending? The most unbearable thing was that after asking about the ending, she still had to ask, what happened after that? Cough, this is actually my life. My phone would ring and someone would call. Sister phone would ask, who is it? I would answer, big cousin. Then I would ask, what is it? What did you say? What did he say? What did you say? What did you say in the end? Brothers. Every time I picked up a call, as long as it was someone she knew, I would have to repeat the phone records of the two people after picking up the call. God knows how curious a woman can be. If she dared to say, can you stop asking? The other party would immediately say, okay, I won't ask. I won't ask about anything in the future. Don't tell me either. Then she would leave angrily. At this time, I still have to coax her and repeat the phone records after coaxing her. In the end, I would get a comment. Why did you have to go through so much trouble if you said so earlier? I'm speechless. By the time Chu Yang had recounted the conversation he made up, he was already sweating profusely. His clothes were drenched in sweat and he was in a sorry state. This was probably the dismal outcome of colluding with each other. A certain king of hell finally couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Women, women. Mo Tianji waved his fan and smiled. He was secretly delighted. After finally sending Chu Lu back to the group of women, Chu Yang fiercely warned Mo Tianji, be more respectful to me in the future. Otherwise, you'll suffer. Mo Tianji changed from his previous submissive attitude and said angrily, you have a younger sister, but don't I have one? Be more respectful to me. You can complain, but can't I? Chu Yang glanced sideways and laughed strangely. Of course you have a younger sister. But does she listen to what you say? My sister has always treated my words like an imperial edict. Everyone has different lives. Comparisons are odious. Emotianji was tongue-tied and black lines appeared on his forehead. In an instant he was utterly defeated. Rui Badong, who was listening at the side, sneered. As the saying goes, when a dog bites another dog, it gets a mouthful of fur. Chu Yang and Emotianji glared at this guy at the same time. The group traveled day and night. They had already entered their destination, the Forest of Terror. Everyone was extremely careful. Whenever they encountered a spirit beast, it would be extremely dangerous. If they encountered any spirit beasts, they would try their best to avoid them. If they really couldn't, they would rather do something as despicable as having a few peak-level saints attack at the same time to get rid of the spirit beast silently at the first moment. Then, they would destroy the corpse at the next moment without leaving any traces. Who knew if this spirit beast was being reared? Or if it caused any commotion that alerted the people in the villa? Caution was the most important thing. They were very careful along the way. It was really hard to describe how they viewed everything as an enemy. However, because they were already here and far away from the surveillance cameras, everyone's speed increased by many times. Of course, there could still be spies here. Therefore, all the saints spread out their divine senses silently, not letting go of even the slightest bit of movement. They entered the Forest of Terror. They went all the way south, shooting out silently like a sharp arrow. The Forest of Terror was indeed worthy of its name. It might not be so dangerous here. At least in the eyes of Chu Yang and the rest, there wasn't much danger. However, the density of this forest could be seen. Ever since Chu Yang and the rest entered, if they didn't jump onto the treetops, they wouldn't be able to see the sky. They couldn't see the blue sky at all. It was really terrifyingly dense. It lived up to its name. After coming to this Forest of Terror, they were constantly harassed by countless spirit beasts along the way. In this natural environment where spirit beasts lived, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that there were as many spirit beasts as there were hairs on a cow. Moreover, the strength of these spirit beasts was also quite terrifying. Although they couldn't pose a real life and death crisis to Chu Yang and the rest, it wasn't easy to kill them silently. In view of this, Mo Tianji warned everyone that they mustn't be stingy with their manpower in case they come across such a situation. They must have misgivings about their status and so on. They must ensure that the howls of the spirit beasts before their deaths don't leak out even if they attack together. They must exterminate the spirit beasts as soon as they come across them. Who knew if there were any secret detection devices nearby? Now that they had come to this step, in the process of approaching the headquarters of the 10,000 Saints' true spirit, any carelessness could lead to failure on the verge of success. They must not make any mistakes. The group of 10 people moved quickly through the forest. Not even a single tree moved from its original position. On the ground, not even a blade of grass was stained with extra dust. 3 days. It took a total of 3 days. When everyone finally saw the towering heavenly stem mountain range in front of them, even the 3 7-star guards, who had always been mature and prudent, let out a long sigh of relief. Chapter 25-34. For the past 3 days and 3 nights, they had been holding their breaths and maintaining a cautious state. It was really not a day that a normal person could endure. For the sake of this important matter, they did not even dare to take a deep breath occasionally. Fortunately, everyone was a peak-level expert, so they were able to endure it. Now that they had reached their destination, everyone began to move on to the next step. Under the cover of the dense trees, Emanunji quietly crouched on the treetops and carefully observed the mountain opposite him. In his palm, a bright copper coin was spinning spontaneously. After a while, the copper coin vibrated in Mo Tianji's palm at the same time. Mo Tianji's face instantly became serious. I didn't expect Master Yun to be a formation expert. Mo Tianji said, he actually set up a nebula-locking formation here. Chu Yang's voice came from the green. Is there a way to quickly break this formation? There are ways to break all formations in this world. There is no such thing as a perfect formation. Mo Tianji said, To break this nebula-locking formation, one must go to the core of the formation to find a way to break it. It has to be broken from the inside to the outside and from the top to the bottom. However, that is a vital spot that no formation expert can completely fix. As long as that spot is destroyed, the operation of this formation will immediately stop and become useless. However, the core of this formation must be at the highest point of this mountain. There must be guards there. Although there may not be too many guards, they must be experts. Tianji heaved a sigh of relief and said, "There is another key point that can be confirmed. The firmness of this heavenly stem mountain is not naturally formed. It is strengthened by a formation. The nebula-locking formation is the key to this. Another characteristic of this formation is that it does not allow any loopholes to exist. In other words, this entire mountain does not even have a single cave. Therefore, there is definitely no exit on this side." Chu Yang was stunned. This formation is very strange. It can actually affect the entire mountain? Tianji sighed softly. This formation is difficult to set up, but its effect is also great. I think that when Master Yun chose this formation that day, he most likely wanted this formation to be able to strengthen the mountain to the greatest extent and also allow the mountain to automatically fill up all the caves. This way, if there are escapees, they can also greatly avoid hiding their tracks. If I were him, I would also choose this formation as the foundation of this mountain. However, there are pros and cons. If we can break the core of this formation in one fell swoop, our chances of success will be greatly increased. Chu Yang heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. He smiled and said, "That's good. Even if it's dangerous to break the formation from above, it's still better than this place full of rats." Tianji snorted and jumped down. "Let's split up. You take one group and I'll take the other. I'll set off from the left. You start from the right, then go around to the opposite side and meet up there. In this way, a complete search net will be formed, completely encircling the organization inside. Nothing will be missed. Our mission is to find the entrance and exit within these two semicircles. After meeting up with the other side, don't stop. Continue to search the other side's area, then return here to regroup and summarize your gains." Tianji said, "If one party doesn't do a thorough search and misses the entrance." He smiled, revealing his snow-white teeth. "From then on, the boss will be replaced." Chu Yang said angrily, "How dare you? You want to usurp my big brother's position in just a few days. Why are you so sure that there will be a mistake on my side? What if there is a mistake on your side?" Tianji shook the copper coins in his hand and smiled calmly. "If there is a mistake on my side, I'm willing to replace Rui Badong as the youngest. From then on, you can command me. Be my elder brother." Rui Badong, GMO and Luo Kudi's eyes suddenly lit up. "Okay, it's a deal. Let's do it." Tianji laughed coldly and said, "This time, you're not in my group." GMO grimaced. Under Tianji's insistence, GMO, Luo Kudi and Rui Badong were in Chu Yang's group. The others were Qing Wu, Tai Butian, Wu Qian and Xinyang. As for the other 8 people, they were in another group, led by Tianji, the scheming usurper. The 10 of them were divided into 2 groups. It was easy to divide them into 2 groups. Immediately, the 2 groups were like 2 sharp arrows, one on the left and the other on the right. They quickly shot into the darkness. Chu Yang clearly knew that this operation was definitely going to be a huge project. And the reason why Tianji had used this extremely far-fetched reason to assign the seriously injured GMO to his side was to show that Tianji himself wasn't confident at all. This could also be considered as a subtle reminder from Tianji. Chu Yang also raised his spirits and focused his attention to 120%. Searching along the way, they soon turned around the heavenly stem mountain range. At this time, everyone realized that the body of this mountain was like a cylinder. Overall, it should be described as surrounded by mountains on all sides, with only an empty space in the middle. However, no matter which side one looked at it from top to bottom, it looked like a hole. No one could tell that there was actually a base or something else hidden within. Only when they were about to reach the opposite side and it was getting more and more desolate did Chu Yang happen to discover that some parts of the grass here seemed to have been stepped on by someone. He could not let go of any clues, especially such an obvious one. Immediately, he began a careful search in this area. For some reason, it was completely useless to use divine senses to search here. In the end, he could only rely on his naked eyes to search bit by bit. After a long time, Chu Yang stopped in front of a big tree that grew against the mountain. This tree was unusually tall and strong. It was as thick as more than 30 people hugging it. It rose straight into the sky like a huge pillar that supported the heavens and the earth. It seemed to be connected with the sky, with the earth and with the mountain, becoming one with nature. Chu Yang carefully observed the bark again and again. Finally, a smile appeared on his face. This seemingly normal tree was actually hollow. To be safe, Chu Yang still released the Calamity Sword and went in to explore. Inside, there was indeed a passage. In the tree trunk that was as thick as more than 30 people hugging it, the passage was not narrow at all. Even a large horse carriage could pass through it smoothly. This is really a work of the gods. Tai Budian looked up at this tall and straight tree that reached into the clouds. Its branches were still lush and green. She could not help but sigh. Hollowing out the entire tree and leaving only the bark and a small part of the tree trunk, it could actually survive for millions of years. This tree had really created a miracle. This is also the result of the formation. Chu Yang sighed and said, Master Yun is really a knowledgeable and multi-talented person. It seems that there's nothing in this world that he doesn't know. But it's a pity that such an amazing person has to walk on this kind of path. With his talent, even if he followed the right path, he might not necessarily be unable to reach the peak. Why bother? Tai Budian said calmly, good or evil, rise or fall with a single thought. However, those who are evil and evil, especially those who can deceive others and steal from the world, are definitely geniuses. If it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have been able to do so many things, and wouldn't have been able to stir up so many waves without anyone knowing. That makes sense. That is indeed the case. Chu Yang nodded. Then, everyone continued to move forward and searched carefully. It was not until a day later that they met up with Mo Tianji and the others on the opposite side. After exchanging their findings, they followed the path that the others had taken and searched carefully again. When they met up again, Chu Yang took the lead and said, there's only one. Mo Tianji's eyes were also shining. Yes, there's only one. This is good news. The two of them looked at each other and saw the excitement in each other's eyes. There was only one exit. It was the best location to annihilate the enemy in one fell swoop. Of course, building such a place was definitely not suitable for making exits that extended in all directions in the first place. The most important thing now is to kill the person guarding the eye of the mountain top first. As long as we can accomplish this, our chances of success will increase by more than 50%. Mo Tianji said. Then, we can kill our way in from this cave entrance and kill all the 10,000 saints' true spirits here without any qualms. Chu Yang nodded and said, the leader guarding this place must be an expert. Furthermore, for the saint to trust him so much and entrust him with such an important task, he must be a trusted aide of the saint. For this matter, to be safe, we need a few more people to go. Chu Yang then ordered, Rui Butong, Xie Dan Qiong, Mo Lei Er, Dong Wushang. The four of you, attack with me. Qing Wu, Tianji, Luo Kadi, and Luo will be in charge of the formation. If that person escapes, you must kill him immediately. You must not give him any chance of survival. Everyone agreed in unison. The figures of Chu Yang and the others flashed and disappeared. The others followed closely behind and rushed to the top of the mountain covered in clouds. The clouds drifted and came and went. Chu Yufeng sat on the top of the mountain, inhaling and exhaling clouds. He was motionless like a stone statue. Under the clouds of the mountain top, no one would be able to see that below him was not solid ground at all. Instead, it was a deep abyss that was hundreds of thousands of feet deep. He was actually sitting in the void above the abyss, quietly circulating his energy. Ever since he took on the task of guarding, he had been cultivating here for hundreds of thousands of years. Perhaps he would continue for a very, very long time. One day, when the 10,000 saints' true spirits dominate the world, you will be the greatest contributor. Whenever he thought of the saint's words, Chu Yufeng could not help but reveal a sarcastic smile. What I want has never been the greatest contributor, nor all the fame and fortune in the world. I only want to see this world be unified through my hands, and be completely and truly under the control of one person. That is the greatest meaning of my existence. That is the thrill of being unparalleled in the world. Only then will my hundreds and thousands of years of guarding not be in vain. Chapter 25-35. Every time Chu Yufeng saw countless seeds gushing out and sprinkling onto the pugilistic world, he would always feel a heartfelt pleasure. These people would turn the pugilistic world upside down in the next tens of thousands of years. I'm also one of the initiators. Chu Yufeng would feel pleasure whenever he thought of the chaotic pugilistic world and the scenes of blood and corpses piling up like mountains. No matter who it was, as long as they were unlucky, and it was because of Chu Yufeng's protection, Chu Yufeng would feel very, very happy. This was undoubtedly a very perverted mentality, and no one knew why. Chu Yufeng also knew that he was perverted. He had never denied this perverted hobby of his, but he was addicted to it and couldn't extricate himself. He couldn't extricate himself. Or perhaps he didn't want to extricate himself at all. Chu Yufeng breathed in and out the clouds wantonly. He could feel that these things were already useless to him. Ever since he became a peak saint, he lost interest in fighting personally. The opponents he faced were too weak, and he didn't feel any pleasure in fighting personally. When he faced enemies of the same level, he was worried that he would fail and die. The losses outweighed the gains. Therefore, his greatest pleasure now was to guard this place. The saint chose him to be here to make the best use of him. With Cloud Master's personality, if Chu Yufeng wasn't such a person and had such a mentality, he wouldn't be so assured to entrust such an important place to this person. In another 3 years, it's time to release another batch of people. Chu Yufeng looked down at the bottomless abyss, and a cruel smile appeared on his lips. Little ones, go out and do whatever you want. No matter if you kill people or others kill you, I'll be very happy. However, at this moment he vaguely felt something. It was as if there was a pair of eyes looking at him from beyond the clouds. He casually turned his head to look. To Chu Yufeng, apart from himself and that person, no one had come to this place for at least tens of thousands of years. It was really lonely. More than 100,000 years ago, there were adventurers who came here, but there were no exceptions. After being toyed with by Chu Yufeng for a few months, they were all cruelly executed. Now, there was finally something new coming? Looks like God can't bear to let me be too lonely, so he sent me some toys to relieve my loneliness. But the moment Chu Yufeng turned his head, he suddenly sensed something deep in the distant clouds. There was a flicker of light. He sat still and looked over there with a cruel expression, like a vulture that had seen a corpse. The next moment he saw a person. One person, dressed in black, stood tall and straight. His gaze was sharp as he stood with a sword in his hand. He looked at Chu Yang in confusion and asked, "Where is this place? Why are you here?" Chu Yufeng smiled with interest. "Come here. I'll tell you. This toy is not bad." From the looks of it, his cultivation level wasn't low. It was rare for her to be so young and tender. The current Chu Yufeng was really interesting. He was so happy from the bottom of his heart, but at this moment he seemed completely harmless. The black-clothed youth said with a puzzled expression, "Can't I say it here? Do you have to go there?" Chu Yufeng licked his lips and smiled. "You'll hear it clearly when you get closer." He swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Looks like this kid is still young. Although he doesn't have much experience in the martial world, he still has some intelligence. This kind of kid is even more adorable. He's worth playing with. Maybe I can play to my heart's content this time. The black-clothed youth said with some fear, "But there's an abyss over there. Why are you meditating in such a dangerous place? You're mistaken. You can actually walk up here. It's no different from walking on the ground." Chu Yufeng's eyes flashed with evil and greed. The black-clothed youth thought for a while and said, "Really? I'll go over. I'm not afraid of you. As he said that, he actually walked over. Chu Yufeng looked at this guy, like a hungry wolf that had been thirsty for tens of thousands of years, suddenly seeing a smooth and white little lamb. Not only can I eat, but I can also play with it. Just thinking about it makes me happy. On the other side, in the distance, Emotianji and the others who were watching by the side almost vomited out last night's dinner. Boss is indeed the boss. Just this act of pretending to be the boy next door is really the best actor in the Heaven Imperial Court. Everyone is in awe of him. Look at his expression. How pure and innocent. Also, how ignorant of the ways of the world, how like a young chick. Who knows that this guy is actually a butcher who can kill for a long time without blinking an eye? Sigh, how can he be the boss? Looks like there's no hope for this generation to usurp the throne. Emotianji and the other brothers all sighed. For a moment, everyone, without exception, pitied Chu Yufeng. You're facing such a terrifying and extreme person who doesn't have any bottom line, and you can still act like you're salivating and can't wait. Who's going to eat who? Who's going to screw who? Who's going to screw who? It's really hard to say. Under everyone's expectant gazes, the pure and innocent Chu Yang walked over step by step. He took 3 steps forward and 2 steps backward. But he was still moving forward. Seeing that he was almost halfway there, Chu Yufeng finally couldn't bear it anymore. He flashed out and grabbed him. He laughed strangely and said, "Come over here, little darling. Let this grandpa love you." However, at this moment, just when Chu Yufeng was in high spirits and thought that he could catch him, Chu Yang suddenly rolled his eyes. His sharp gaze shot out like lightning. At the same time, a majestic sword light appeared. It was so glorious that it seemed to surpass the ages. What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? Chu Yufeng's heart was filled with extreme pleasure. He didn't think that there would be such a sudden change. Under the shock, he instinctively flipped his wrist and attacked with his saber. With a clang, the saber was almost unable to resist and shattered instantly. Then, the sword light was right in front of his chest. Fortunately, although there was almost no room for resistance, it wasn't that there was absolutely no room for resistance. Although it shattered instantly, it still helped Chu Yufeng by a little bit of time. Using that little bit of time, Chu Yufeng retreated, his face pale with fright. This saber had accompanied him for nearly 1,000,000 years. It could be said that it was a top-notch divine weapon in the world. Moreover, it was a peerless demonic saber that already had a saber soul. Unexpectedly, it couldn't even withstand a single blow from the opponent's sword. The opponent's sword light was like a rainbow. It chased after his chest like gangrene. Chu Yufeng retreated like lightning. But under Chu Yang's rapid pursuit, he didn't even have time to turn around. He didn't even have time to say a word. The sword was still flickering in front of his chest. It was like a gangrene. One chased, and the other retreated. In an instant, they had covered thousands of feet of space. Chu Yang's sword power didn't weaken, and his sword speed didn't decrease. Chu Yufeng's decline was complete. Chu Yufeng knew that things weren't going well. The young man in front of him was actually a peak saint like him. In terms of overall strength, he was even stronger than him. Chu Yufeng had been at the peak for too long. It was so long that he had forgotten the power that peak experts should have. He never dared to fight with experts of the same level. Retreating, gradually became retreating. Just like now, when Chu Yufeng faced Chu Yang's sudden attack, the first thing that came to his mind was to counterattack. Although Chu Yang's sword could severely injure Chu Yufeng, he would also have to suffer a considerable amount of backlash. With the cultivation, power, and the limits of the physical body of a peak saint, even the sharpness of the Calamity Sword couldn't destroy Chu Yufeng's entire physical body in one move. Even if something unexpected happened, Chu Yufeng still had a lot of room to escape. But now, everything had become a pie in the sky. Chu Yufeng saw that he was at an absolute disadvantage, and that he could die at any moment. He gritted his teeth and wanted to fight with all his might. Suddenly, he felt that there was some kind of dreamlike distortion in front of him. A flower, a beautiful flower, suddenly bloomed in front of him. That extreme beauty made even Chu Yufeng, who had an extremely twisted mind, lose himself for a moment. That moment was enough to decide too many things. Chu Yufeng felt a sharp pain in his chest and instantly came back to his senses. He saw a sword piercing through his chest. It was pulled out, stabbed in again, pulled out again, and stabbed in again. In such a short period of time, the sword had already entered and exited Chu Yufeng's heart more than a dozen times. Then, the incomparably gorgeous flower drilled into the wound by a hair's breadth and exploded with a loud bang. The blood mist exploded. Chu Yufeng screamed. Suddenly, his body twisted strangely and rushed up like a shadow. It was mixed with his mangled flesh and blood. It was only for a moment. He had lost the initiative and had almost been dismembered by Chu Yang and Xie Dan Qiong. He had paid the price of almost half of his body and had finally escaped from the lockdown of these two experts. This price couldn't be said to be not disastrous. Chu Yufeng let out a shrill scream full of fear and rushed up to the sky. He hadn't fought with experts of the same level for hundreds of thousands of years. The few times he had fought, he had used extremely strong means to oppress the weak. This reality had made him forget the so-called fighting instinct. The severe pain at this moment made him realize that even if he was far away, he was still in Jianghu. Where there are people, there will be Jianghu. He thought angrily in his heart, I must kill these two people as long as I can get a little bit of breathing space. I must let these two people suffer innumerable torture to vent my resentment. Chapter 25:36. Although Chu Yufeng was thinking, his speed of escape did not slow down at all. Unexpectedly, the clouds in midair suddenly turned into a big hand, grabbing his hair and pulling it down. In the next moment, Chu Yufeng felt his body being clenched into fists by hundreds of hands and beaten up violently. His lower body was being hit by hundreds of knees at the same time. Ouch! Chu Yufeng let out an inhuman cry and said in disbelief, What is this? A gentle voice explained, This is being beaten up. How can one not be beaten up in the martial world? There will be surprises coming one after another, enjoy them well. In the next moment, the cloud suddenly turned into a phoenix, and a mouthful of fire that was so red that it was almost purple came out. Nirvana flame. Chu Yufeng's face turned green. Why was there a phoenix here? Water and fire were mutually exclusive. When the water was high, it could extinguish the fire, and when the fire was high, it could boil the water. If there were things in the world that could really bring about life-threatening danger, this nirvana flame would at least be in the top 3. Under the miserable condition of half of his body being damaged, Chu Yufeng did not dare to be touched by the nirvana flame again. He retreated with all his might, as if his life depended on it. Unexpectedly, with a flash of black sword light, another big hole suddenly appeared in his chest. He screamed crazily, and the clouds in the air gathered towards his body like rivers flowing into the sea. I'm already half a step away. The clouds in the sky are all my life clones. You can't kill me. How can you kill me? He screamed crazily, and the clouds made whooshing sounds as they quickly gathered into his body. His damaged body that was caught off guard and suffered serious injuries was actually recovering bit by bit. Puff puff. 2 short swords pierced deeply into his 2 eye sockets. Chu Yufeng screamed again and pulled out the flying daggers in his eye sockets. He threw them out, and they turned into 2 streaks of lightning. He shouted angrily, Who is it? Emolevar's attack was successful, but she did not stay in the same place. Once a top-notch assassin attacked, she immediately retreated, and the 2 flying daggers naturally could not hurt Emolev. At this time, Dong Wuxiang had already stood up, and his dark saber was like a thunderbolt. Downward slash. Put. What a domineering slash. From the top of Chu Yufeng's head to his chest and abdomen, he was completely split into 2. But he still did not die. His body was clearly cut open, and there was no blood at all. Dong Wuxiang raised his dark saber. The 2 halves of the body that had been cut in half quickly gathered back together. As if it was of course, it was regenerating. Was there really a body like a cloud and mist? Calamity Sword's light flashed again. Chu Yang's "so what if I slaughter the whole world" technique came to an end. He hurriedly took a breath and used his famous move again. One ray of cold light pierces 10,000 feet. The speed of this move was even higher, and it pierced into Chu Yofeng's body by a hair's breadth. The sword qi exploded within Chu Yofeng's body. At the same time, the most evil devouring power of the Calamity Sword was activated. This move was the Yofeng's attack. The next moment, when one half of his body was pressed against the other, the two halves of his body began to show signs of healing. Almost at the same time, the clouds and mist within a few hundred miles rushed into his body. Immortal body! Chu Yang and Xie Danqiong looked at each other in surprise. They did not expect this guy to have reached such a stage. If he had chosen to have a fair battle with him right from the start, he might have really suffered a loss at the hands of Yi Shiwen. But Chu Yofeng's recovery speed was much slower than before. For a moment, Chu Yang's moves were entangled, Xie Danqiong's viburnum flowers danced, Rui Budong's nirvana flames burned, and Mo Lei's hidden weapons danced. Dong Wuxiang's dark saber smashed Chu Yofeng's body like a giant hammer. Yes, smashing. He was smashing with the back of his saber. The effect of the saber slashing was far worse than usual. It was better to smash like this. Luo Kadi and Sacrifice Maiden, the two new swords, attacked from the air. With a twist of the two swords, Chu Yofeng's two arms were sent flying. Then, Mo Tianji caught it. However, the two arms that had been separated from the body were still struggling violently. Even with the Mo Tianji's strength that was also at the pinnacle of the saint stage, he almost couldn't hold on to it. The three great protectors drew their swords and sabers at the same time, turning the two arms into dust. At this moment, Chu Yufeng finally saw blood. However, it was still not blood, but a bloody mist. The two arms that had completely turned into powder transformed into a bloody mist that filled the sky. The mist was misty and drifted in the air. They were slowly turning into clouds. For a moment, the three great protectors didn't know where to attack in order to defeat the enemy. Don't pass. Mo Tianji made a prompt decision and shouted. Rui Budong didn't hesitate in the slightest. He flashed over and opened his mouth, causing the flames of rebirth to shoot out swiftly and violently once more. Sure enough, it had a miraculous effect. In a short moment, it completely incinerated the bloody mist that the two arms had transformed into, and there wasn't the slightest trace left behind. It seemed that Rui Budong's flames of rebirth was still the most effective way to deal with Chu Yofeng's techniques of rebirth. With one successful move, Chu Yufeng, who was still suffering from the attacks of the 8 great experts, let out a mournful cry that reached his soul. Obviously, the two arms being completely incinerated was more painful for him than all the previous injuries. This result seemed to remind everyone. The Calamity Sword, Dark Saber, and Long Sword struck at the same time again. Large chunks of flesh and bones were cut off. The three great protectors were responsible for chopping the flesh while Rui Budong kept spitting fire. Chu Yufeng howled miserably, "You guys are too much. I've swallowed millions of lives to cultivate the immortal body, the indestructible body." Ugh. Another scream was heard. This time, after his legs were cut off, they were instantly incinerated and no longer existed in this world. Almost at the same time, the Calamity Sword struck down from the top of his head, piercing straight into his Baihui acupoint. The power of devouring was fully activated once more. This time, without the interference of the hands and feet, the power of devouring was truly unleashed. Its ability to subdue the enemy was actually not inferior to Rui Budong's flames of rebirth. As the power of devouring increased, the power of the Calamity Sword became more and more powerful. Chu Yofeng's screams became softer and softer. After a long while, the extremely damaged body slowly shrank and gradually turned into a cloud of smoke. Finally, with a bang, even the smoke was gone. Only then did everyone finally put away their weapons. Rui Budong was still afraid that the enemy would come back from the ashes. Very simply, he used the flames of rebirth to burn the clouds and mist here once more, cutting the weeds and removing the roots, eliminating the hidden dangers. Only when the space was burned until it collapsed did he stop. The battle was over. Everyone looked at each other and felt a lingering fear in their hearts. facing such an enemy. It was really too terrifying. The battle just now was actually very short, but the intensity of the battle could be seen. If Chu Yufeng was given the slightest chance, he would have escaped. Then, the result of this battle would have been rewritten. Chu Yufeng's cultivation might be slightly higher than everyone else's, but this trait of being unkillable. It was a huge headache. Rui Badong still needed some time to be reborn, but he didn't need it at all. He could use the clouds and mist to replenish himself at any time. Even if he was burned to ashes, they were still worried that he might come back to life. Only when he was burned to the point where not even ashes were left, and not even vaporized, could he be considered dead. Millions of dead souls. Only then could such a perverted demon be created. Everyone was still worried. They searched around carefully. Only then did they confirm that Chu Yufeng had really disappeared. Only then did everyone breathe a sigh of relief. He's dead. Rui Badong was still worried and continued to search. We can confirm that he's dead. Chu Yang felt the calamity sword tremble slightly. It was a rare feeling of being full. Obviously, the soul power of Chu Yufeng that it swallowed just now was also a very rare supplement for the calamity sword. How strong is such an expert? Everyone can see that in this villa, there must be at least one person of the same level. Emo Tianji said seriously, so, everyone, don't let your guard down. Yes. Chu Yang said, that day Shui Leihan said that. During the battle against the Thousand Saints True Devil, no one saw any of the great devil masters under the Thousand Saints True Devil. It was said that they were all killed by the saint alone. And based on the current situation, this person is very likely to be one of the great devil masters back then. Cloud Master didn't really kill them at all. Instead, he took them all for his own use. If we calculate in this way, there's a big chance that there are at least 2 such super experts down there if we divide them evenly among the 3 bases. Our chances of winning aren't optimistic. So, we must be very, very careful. Chu Yang took a deep breath. Mo Tianji smiled bitterly. In fact, only these great devil masters know how to cultivate the Thousand Saints' true spirit. In this aspect, even Cloud Master himself might not know as much as these great devil masters. And we don't have any information in this area. Everything is obvious. Everyone sighed at the same time. There's no time to lose. Chu Yang said, the formation here hasn't really been broken yet. It's just that the Guardian is dead. The formation is still effective. No one can leave this place for now. Let's go down immediately and kill our way in. Mo Tianji said, others may not be able to get out, but it's not necessarily true for the other 2 experts. We must be prepared for this. We can't let anyone leave. Everyone nodded with a heavy expression and solemnly agreed. If the other 2 had similar cultivation as Chu Yufeng, then this battle might not be very optimistic. I've been cleaning for the whole day today. The reason is because last night I was chatting in the group. Then a few of my sisters posted photos. I was very excited to see them. Just as I was commenting on a few photos, a sinister voice came from behind. Yo, you're teasing girls. Your skills are not bad. You even managed to coax them to post photos. My wife is very angry and made me clean today. Chapter 25:37. Before this, everyone was optimistic and thought that this was just a training base. Even if there were 1 or 2 high-level or even peak-level saints here, it should not be difficult to kill them all. However, after this battle, they no longer dared to underestimate this place. Chu Yufeng was no longer just a peak-level saint, but a super expert who was half a step away from becoming a saint. He had an almost immortal and indestructible body. If not for his negligence in battle and being caught off guard by Chu Yang, the final result of this battle would be hard to predict. And there were at least 2 more super experts like Chu Yufeng. The following battle would definitely be a great test for Chu Yang and the others. Chu Yang waved his hand. Without hesitation, everyone fell down like meteors. They went straight for the big tree in the hole. He gently used the calamity sword to cut a big hole in the bark. Chu Yang looked at the dark situation inside with rapt attention. Just as he was about to enter, he unexpectedly heard a voice coming from inside. "Who is it?" There was actually someone. Chu Yang didn't say anything further. He rushed in with a whoosh sound. The sword light suddenly flashed, and boundless sword light instantly filled this narrow space. A few muffled groans suddenly sounded, and then a strong smell of blood assailed their nostrils. Chu Yang suddenly stretched out his hand and supported the nearest corpse. Then, his sword light flashed like lightning and circled around this small and narrow space. He waved out a few more streams of energy to support the other few corpses, and they slowly fell to the ground so that these corpses would not make too much noise when they fell. Then, he had time to take a closer look. He saw that there were 4 people in this tunnel, but they had all turned into ghosts under his indiscriminate attack just now. Chu Yang did not stop. The Calamity Sword once again sent out its devouring power, completely devouring the 4 corpses. In this battle, Chu Yang's Calamity Sword's devouring power and Rui Butong's Nirvana Flame were the best weapons to annihilate the enemy. These were the only 2 methods to annihilate the enemy. These were the only 2 ways to ensure that the 10,000 Saints' true spirit was completely annihilated. As long as it was possible, Chu Yang or Rui Butong would naturally destroy the enemy. After erasing the traces, Chu Yang searched a few hundred feet forward. After confirming that there was no abnormality, he opened the tree bark. He let everyone in. Next, everyone silently followed the path of the tree hole, heading towards the distant and dark secret passage in the mountain. Chu Le walked at the back of the group and carefully stuck the piece of bark back on. Then, as he walked forward, he set up a poison array behind him. In such an unusually tightly sealed space, Li Tianlan was still in a daze. This was Chu Le's natural home ground. All the poisonous fog was not wasted at all. It silently filled the entire passageway. A pure and harmless smile remained on Chu Le's sweet and pretty face. She waved her fair hands gently, just like a merciful fairy from the heavens who was scattering petals of happiness to the world. Who could have imagined that she would spill it? It was actually a terrifying poisonous fog that could annihilate all life in the world? As Chu Le moved forward, the gradually rising poisonous fog in the passageway behind her was so thick that it couldn't be dissolved. It could be said that as long as it was not a supermaster like Diego, anyone who passed by here, even if it was a high-level saint or a peak saint, would be skinned alive. And, at least a layer of their skin would be skinned alive. This passageway was really very long, as if it had completely opened up the mountain. Everyone walked no less than tens of thousands of feet, but it was still pitch black in front of them. Suddenly, there was another station. The people inside were also wiped out by Chu Yang at the first instance. After that, it was a smooth journey. There were no more hidden guards. Now that things had come to this point, everyone simply let go of their worries. Using his fastest speed, he flew all the way. Finally, there was a flash of light in front. They seemed to have reached the exit. "Big brother, I'll go back first." Chu Le waved. She went back along the original path. Outside, there were still GMO, Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian, who couldn't form an effective battle force. Chu Le went back to guard. With these 4 people around, even if someone was lucky enough to charge through this 1,000-feet passageway filled with poisonous fog, their cultivation would probably be reduced to less than 10%. If they were to face Chu Le, GMO and the other 3, they would definitely not be able to fight back. Regarding this, Chu Yang and Imo Tianji were very assured. The light at the entrance of the cave was getting closer and closer. Chu Yang took the lead and rushed out first. But he almost smashed his head, because the entrance of the cave was actually not directly open. Instead, it was blocked by a large piece of transparent white crystal wall. The white crystal wall was placed here. Firstly, it had a soundproof effect. Secondly, it blocked the entrance of the cave so that the spiritual energy in this world wouldn't evaporate. Naturally, Chu Yang was completely unaware of this. Now, he and his sword crashed into the white crystal wall just like that. With a loud boom, no one knew whether it was because Chu Yang's head was really hard or because the tribulation sword was really indestructible, but in any case, the white crystal wall exploded like a bomb. It was just that it was accompanied by Chu Yang's murmuring and cursing. "Fuck! I'm dead." It left a discordant note in this exploding firework. Behind him, Mo Tianji and the others tried their best to hold back their laughter and rushed out together. A voice shouted, "Why are you all out? What are you?" Before the voice finished speaking, the owner of the voice had already been beheaded by Chu Yang and died. In the next moment, everyone floated up and stood in this place that was isolated from the rest of the world. As far as the eye could see, this was a very large basin environment. Green and red flowers covered thousands of acres of land. The scenery was very pleasant. The area was divided into different areas. There were countless people diligently cultivating here. Strong winds blew and shouts rang out continuously. Slightly further away, there was a row of neat houses. There was no telling how many houses there were. As for what happened at the entrance of the cave, because it was too sudden, most people didn't realize it. But those who were closer had already rushed over in shock and anger. But they had just started when they saw sword light flashing in front of them. Saber energy rushed into the sky and snowflakes danced in the air. 12 people were like 12 fierce tigers that had been released from their cages. They pounced into the crowd with unparalleled ferocity. In just one exchange, the ground was already covered in blood. No less than hundreds of people were lying neatly on the ground. This was a critical moment. Facing this 10,000 saints true spirit training ground, there was no room for mercy. Thus, everyone had steeled their hearts to start a massacre, not showing any mercy. Danqiong, you and the 3 great guards go over there. Kadi and Shenyang go over there. Wushang, you and Layer go over there. Tianji, you and Ray Badong go over there. After Chu Yang sent out the 4 directions, he let out a long howl. The sword light of the Calamity sword suddenly flew out. It turned into the most dazzling ball of light. In the next moment, the ball of light suddenly exploded and turned into a shining dragon. It swept out along the ground. A series of screams rang out. With that ball of light as the starting point, the 10,000 saints true spirits who were in the training stage collapsed in droves. The others also hardened their hearts. They rushed towards their respective positions. Many of them were kidnapped here. They didn't do it willingly. But from the moment they became 10,000 saints true spirits, it was as if their own selves had already died. What was left were only puppets controlled by the saint monarchs. Tools to seize power. There was no cure. There was no way to break it. Therefore, even though there were still many people who couldn't bear to do it and many who felt uncomfortable, they still killed them mercilessly. Because keeping these people alive would only bring about a great disaster to the human world. These 12 peerless experts started a massacre together. And these people in the base, most of them didn't have high cultivations. The highest was only in the heaven realm. Under the massacre of the 12 experts, they had no power to resist at all. In just a short while, blood flowed like a river. This continued for a while. In a villa slightly further away, the sound of gongs and drums suddenly rang out. A voice full of anger said, "Who dares to be so arrogant?" Then a light flashed in midair. 2 figures suddenly appeared in the air and shouted, "Stop! I have something to say." How could Chu Yang and the others listen to them and stop? Instead, they went one step further. With a wave of the Calamity sword, a cold light pierced 10,000 fathoms. With another fierce move, thousands of people on the field screamed and fell at the same time. Everyone's throat was spurting blood. These people weren't Chu Yufeng. Their vital points were not far from death. "Junior, how dare you?" With an angry shout, the pressure in the sky increased. A holy white light shone, and a figure had already gone above Chu Yang. Chu Yang's body slid like a fish out of the attack range. His body flashed like lightning and rushed into another sports field. Like a torrential storm, he attacked indiscriminately with his 10 swords. Before the screams could be heard, his body had already rushed into the dense crowd on the other side with a sword light. Behind him, the person who was chasing closely was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. He screamed but couldn't do anything to Chu Yang. At this moment, Chu Yang was more slippery than a loach. He didn't care about him at all. That person's cultivation was about the same as Chu Yang's. Even though that person was slightly stronger than Chu Yang, at this moment, Chu Yang was using his movement technique. It was unpredictable, sometimes forward, sometimes backward, sometimes left, sometimes right. It was impossible to catch him. That person passively chased after Chu Yang's footsteps. In fact, he couldn't threaten Chu Yang at all in a short period of time. And Chu Yang's massacre never stopped. The people here were really too dense. They could reach him at any time, and the sharpness of the Calamity Sword was displayed vividly at this moment. With a casual swing of the sword, dozens of people would die under the sword easily. This person saw that his pursuit and attacks were completely ineffective. Most of his attacks had hit empty air and only caused huge pits on the ground to be filled with dust. However, he was unable to threaten Chu Yang in the slightest. Helpless, he cursed loudly. His body turned in the air and pounced to the other side. His target was coincidentally Mo Tianji. Let me explain something first. Sister Feng is someone who never reads novels. Wah, then. Chapter 25:38. Mo Tianji was even more slippery. With Rui Badong as his cover, it was even more difficult to succeed. The battle here was exceptionally brilliant. On the other side, the remaining people continued to kill without mercy. Almost in an instant, the 12 people had already charged from one side of the cave to the other. Then they turned around at the same time and charged back. Those who were lucky enough to escape once again faced the call of the Grim Reaper. Only this time, the experts in the villa had all reacted. They shouted angrily and attacked to stop them. Dong Wuxiang and Mo Lei were already fighting with different enemies. Mo Qingwu was also fighting with two women in black. Although these two women's cultivation was not as good as Mo Qingwu's, they were still saints. With the two of them working together, they could temporarily stop Mo Qingwu. Both sides fought fiercely for a while. Chu Yang, who was on a killing spree, killed all the remaining real spirits on his side. He turned around and joined Mo Qingwu's battle circle. As the Calamity Sword flashed in the air, it passed through in an extremely unreasonable way and forced its way into the battle circle. One of the women was just about to fight, but the sword in her hand had already turned into powder under the Calamity Sword. Before she could withdraw her hand to dodge, one of her arms was already gone. Then her shoulder, chest, head were all slashed into pieces by Chu Yang's sword. Xie Danqiong led the three guards. No one stopped him. He was really like a tiger in a flock of sheep. He killed from the south to the north, and then from the east to the west. He completely carried out Chu Yang's order, leave no one alive. The only 7 experts in the villa had already been dealt with by Chu Yang and the others. Moreover, all of them were at a disadvantage. Xie Danqiong and the others naturally had no qualms about attacking. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, the remaining people let out a howl almost at the same time. They broke out of the encirclement toward the cave entrance. All of them were like stray dogs, panicking like fish that had escaped the net. Xie Danqiong only sneered but did not stop them. He only chased after them. He watched as the remaining few thousand people hurriedly entered the cave entrance. As for the others, they had already been killed long ago. After Xie Danqiong led the guards to search the entire villa, he confirmed that except for a few high-level experts, there was no one left alive. The only remaining ones that had escaped the net. There were only less than 3,000 people who had entered the poisonous fog tunnel. With a single order, the 12 men surrounded the 7 men and began to fight. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Although he had expected that the attack would go smoothly, it still went so smoothly when it came to it. It still made everyone feel relieved. Out of the remaining 7 leaders, the woman in black was the first to be defeated. Her heart was pierced through by Mo Lei's sword, and she was then ruthlessly chopped into pieces by Dong Wuxiang's dark saber. Then, one of the other 2 died under Luo Kadi's 2 swords. The other one was killed by Rui Badong. Another person saw that something was amiss. He wanted to escape, but Mo Tianji's jade flute had already shot out of his chest. Then, his body exploded with a bang. In the blink of an eye, 5 out of 7 of the enemy's experts had been killed. Of the remaining two people, one had messy hair and a face full of beard, while the other had red hair like a ghost. However, these two had the highest cultivation bases. He was above Chu Yang, so he could still hold on. They even attacked and defended, not falling into a disadvantage at all. Chu Yang looked at them with his sword in hand and understood. These two people should be the great evil master's subordinates. Otherwise, they definitely wouldn't have such strong cultivation bases. One must know that those who were participating in the attack were all peak-level saints. As long as they were slightly weaker, they would be destroyed immediately. However, these two people had actually held on until now, not falling into a disadvantage at all. No one is allowed to help. Rui Batong shouted, baring his teeth and rushing forward again. His opponent was the red-haired man. Luo Kadi also wanted to shout, but before he could, a sword light flashed in front of him. Chu Yang had already taken over this opponent. He sneered and said, "Great Devil Master? Which one are you?" The bearded man opposite him said coldly, "It's rare for a kid like you to know the name of our great Devil Master. Or you." Chu Yang brandished his long sword, and sword energy enveloped his opponent like a violent storm. Then he insipidly said, "Great Devil Master, you're already a thing of the past. There's no place for you in the world right now. You people who blindly hold on to your rotten signboard can't scare anyone at all." The bearded man said coldly, "Whether the signboard is rotten or not, we'll only know after a battle of life and death." Chu Yang sneered, "Good, good." As the two talked, sword energy overflowed everywhere, leaving no space at all. Luo Kadi was full of resentment, but he couldn't interfere. Sacrificial Lady went forward to pull him, but Luo Kadi also knew what was good for him, and slowly retreated to one side. Mo Tianji smiled secretly. He had already seen that this opponent's cultivation was not only above Luo Kadi, but also slightly above Chu Yang. If Luo Kadi continued to fight with him alone, he would definitely be at a disadvantage in the end. If Luo Kadi really said, "No one is allowed to help," the result would be very ugly. Luo Kadi didn't have an immortal body like Rui Batong. And Chu Yang's method of replacing Luo Kadi without leaving a trace was the most appropriate way to solve this situation. "How did you find this place?" The bearded man faced Chu Yang's storm-like attacks, and it was getting more and more difficult. He couldn't help but be shocked. Although one's cultivation was profound, it didn't necessarily mean that one would have the upper hand on the battlefield. Tactics, weapons, moves, morale, and other conditions were the key to victory or defeat. The bearded man had the upper hand against Luo Kadi. But he had fallen into a complete disadvantage against Chu Yang. Where did these people come from? And each one of them was so sharp. They knew most of the experts in this world. Even if they didn't know, there would be new information sent in every once in a while. However, only 3 of the people in front of him knew him. As for the others, he didn't know him at all. Who are these people? Of course we can find it. Chu Yang laughed. Lord Saint told us about this place. The bearded man sneered, "Bullshit." Chu Yang smiled. "You don't believe me? Then who do you think told us?" The bearded man's eyes flashed fiercely. He didn't speak anymore. Suddenly, the rapid movement suddenly became silent. Standing with a sword, he suddenly let out a long roar. Every strand of hair on his head stood on end, and a destructive power surged out from his body. Chu Yang's face was solemn. He knew that this guy was ready to go all out. The next attack was definitely going to be an extremely powerful one. But Chu Yang was puzzled. There were only 2 of them left, and the situation was so unfavorable. Why didn't they escape? Even a fool could see the current situation. His group already had the upper hand. Even if they fought desperately, it would be difficult for them to escape defeat. In that case, why didn't they escape? Following the bearded man's desperate move, another destructive force rose. Rui Batong let out a strange cry and somersaulted out. The 2 people opposite him actually chose to go all out at the same time. Why didn't you escape? Chu Yang's calamity sword was ready to be released. What harm was there in slaughtering the entire world? He was already full of energy. He could release it at any time. Facing the enemy who was going all out, he asked in a deep voice. "Ha! On the opposite side, the bearded man's eyes shot out a cruel look. He said word by word, "As devil masters, we have never shown mercy to the enemy. And we've never shown any mercy to ourselves. But you were subdued in the end, and stayed here to be slaves for 1,000,000 years." Chu Yang snorted. "If you really didn't care about your own lives, you would have died long ago. You would have died 1,000,000 years ago. But the fact is that you haven't died yet, and are still dragging out an ignoble existence. Facing us, you are showing indifference to life and death. Is there any meaning? Are you putting on an act?" On the other side, the red-haired man seemed to be hurt by Chu Yang's words. The tyrannical aura on his body became stronger and stronger. He roared, "If we could really escape, do we still need you to remind us?" Chu Yang's heart moved. Could it be that there are some restrictions here? So that they can't escape at all? Thinking about it, this was indeed the only reasonable way. With the saint's character, how could he not control these people and let them be in charge of this secret base? One must know that these great devil masters were all unruly villains. As long as any one of them walked out and shouted, all of the saint's schemes would be for naught. But they still stayed here obediently. There must be another reason. Chu Yang was thinking about all kinds of reasons when the two people opposite him had already launched an attack. Chu Yang shouted, "Why bother with the rules of the martial world when dealing with such villains? Everyone attack together and kill them." Shameless. The two people opposite him were fuming with anger. They didn't expect that this guy opposite them was also a peak-level saint, one of the top experts in the world, to be so shameless and ungentlemanly. If this attack was launched, the one with the sword might still be able to keep his life, but the skinny one was destined to die together with him. But at this juncture, the guy with the sword actually ordered a group attack. Their efforts were all for naught. This was too depressing. Two peak-level saint experts couldn't even drag one of them down with them in the end. Mo Tianji gave the order. Dong Wushang, Mo Lei, Sacrificial Maiden, Xie Danqiong, Mo Qingwu, the three guards, Luo Kadi. Everyone rushed up together. Swords and sabers flew out together, and hidden weapons flew everywhere. Everyone gave it their all, giving it their all. A destructive aura suddenly exploded. The two people opposite them gave it their all, and finally launched a desperate attack. Two destructive rays of light suddenly spread out. Like a tsunami, they rolled out furiously in all directions. Chapter 25-39. Dozens of terrifying powers that could destroy everything collided at the same time. Chu Yang. So what if Chu Yang's massacre the world, Xie Danqiong's viburnum flower, Mo Tianji's purple jade flute, Mo Qingwu's Qingwu dream saber, Dong Wushang's black saber, Mo Lei's black sword, boom. With an earth-shattering boom, all the buildings in the valley collapsed in an orderly fashion. Dozens of people turned into flying people at the same time. Chu Yang was in midair, but his reaction was the fastest. With a flick of his wrist, the calamity sword flew out of his hand. The bearded man who was stumbling backwards suddenly trembled. He watched as the calamity sword pierced through his body, causing him to stagger for 5 steps. The tip of the sword came out of his body and pierced deeply into the red-haired man's heart. A single sword, just a single sword, actually connected the two of them together. Under the joint attack of the 12 experts, the two of them were in a terrible state. Not only were their internal organs shattered, their vital energy was also depleted. Now that the sword pierced through their bodies, they couldn't break free. The calamity sword shone brightly and its devouring power was activated again. Almost at a speed visible to the naked eye, the bodies of the two great evil masters quickly shrank. At this time, the two of them suddenly staggered and gradually steadied themselves. They looked at Chu Yang and the others with strange cruelty and said softly, "You're finished." The corners of the two people's mouths were actually mixed with cruel smiles. Their eyes were also filled with cruel pleasure. The next moment, with a soft sound, the bodies of the two evil masters turned into dry bones. Then, the dry bones turned into powder and scattered on the ground. Two great evil masters. They completely disappeared from this world without a trace. Everyone was a little confused by the behavior of the two people before they died. You're already dead to the point that you can't be any more dead, but you can still say that we're finished? Who's finished? Could it be that these two fellows had lost their minds before they died? Could it be a curse of dissatisfaction? But what's the point? Just as everyone was puzzled, suddenly, a light gust of wind sounded. How could there be wind in such a valley surrounded by mountains and nebulas? Chu Yang and Mo Tianji, who were quick-witted, had this thought. Suddenly, the sound of the wind grew louder, and in an instant, a strong gust of wind blew, sending sand and stones flying. All the corpses on the ground were swept to the side by this sudden gust of wind, and the heart of that gust of wind. A figure gradually took shape. He was wearing a high hat and a wide belt. His face was lean and handsome. His long eyebrows reached his temples, and his eyes were deep. Her long beard fluttered in the wind. His white robes fluttered in the wind as he stood alone in the air. Looking at Chu Yang and the others, he smiled and said, "You have indeed destroyed this place, but you will replace it." Chu Yang and the others were shocked. "Master Yun!" The 12 of them were dumbfounded at the same time. Shouldn't the Saint Monarch still be in the extreme heaven and be restrained by the demon empress? Why would he suddenly appear here? What was going on? Dong Wuxiang was also shocked when he saw this. His heart sank, but he shouted angrily, "Nonsense! Come down and face your death." On the other side, Master Cloud's robes were as white as snow. He looked at Dong Wuxiang with a sharp gaze and said indifferently, "Not bad, you do have some imposing manner. However, you are destined to be destroyed here." Dong Wuxiang was about to speak when Mo Tianji suddenly thought of something. He took a step forward and said, "Who are you? What are you planning to do by appearing at this time?" Everyone was surprised when they heard this. Lord Cloud was the Holy Monarch. Everyone had seen his image before. So, how could Mo Tianji say such an inexplicable thing? In the air, Master Yun stood with his hands behind his back. With a bleak expression, he said, "Why, you don't recognize me?" Chu Yang's eyes turned, and he hurriedly said, "Tianji, this seems to be the Saint Monarch?" Xie Dan Qiong was the quick-witted one. He said, "Something's not right." On the opposite side, Master Yun looked at everyone coldly and said indifferently, "No matter what you say, you are destined to stay here forever." Mo Tianji's eyes flashed with a trace of understanding. He let out a sigh of relief and immediately transmitted a message to everyone, saying, "This person in front of us is not the Saint Monarch himself. This person should be a doppelganger of the Saint Monarch, and a doppelganger that has the consciousness of the real body." Everyone secretly let out a sigh of relief, but they immediately tensed up again. The original body, doppelganger, the real body, the soul. At this level, everyone was well aware of what this represented. It represented an undying and indestructible strength that surpassed the heavenly imperial court. As long as there was a doppelganger, even if the original body was destroyed and the soul scattered, it would not be a big deal. It could be reborn at any time and place, and its strength would not be reduced. When the doppelganger's cultivation reached a certain level, it could feed back to the original body and make up for each other's shortcomings. If there was a doppelganger, it would be equivalent to two people cultivating at the same time. It would be twice the result with half the effort. If the original body rose, the doppelganger would rise. And vice versa. That level was still an unattainable level for the current people. The only thing worth rejoicing over was that this was just a doppelganger. After all, a doppelganger was much weaker than the original body. At this point, everyone finally let out a sigh of relief. However, this doppelganger in front of them was definitely not an ordinary person. Not to mention anything else, just the pressure that he brought to everyone when he first appeared was already far above that of an ordinary peak-level saint. Dong Wuxiang even felt that the power of this doppelganger of the Saint Monarch was much stronger than that of Zui Wuqing. Dong Wuxiang was the only one present who had fought with the real descendant of Di Hedon. Although there was a big gap in strength between Di and Di's empress, And Zue Wuqing was not the weakest among them, but he was close. However, he was still a member of the strongest group of people in the world. However, the pressure that this doppelganger gave Dong Wuxiang was actually several times that of Zue Wuqing back then. Chu Yang, Xie Danqiong, and the others had all participated in the encirclement of Yuan Tianjie back then. At that time, Yuan Tianjie only had less than a tenth of his strength left, and everyone was almost wiped out. At this moment, they could clearly feel that this doppelganger in front of them was probably not the least bit inferior to Yuan Tianjie's peak-level cultivation. This doppelganger looked at everyone coldly. Suddenly, he waved his hand, and an inexplicable force rushed up to the sky. That force was extremely fast, and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Chu Yang and the others were all baffled. Originally, everyone had been on their guard, preparing to face any attack that could come at any time. However, this doppelganger had waved his hand in such a meaningless manner. Moreover, he had even released such a huge amount of force. What was the purpose of this? Was it to show off? To intimidate? Wasn't this an unnecessary move? However, in the next moment, the answer came out. Although the force released by that wave of his hand had indeed hit empty air, it was definitely not meaningless. A kind of soft popping sound could be heard continuously in the air. Then, a series of fine rays of light could be seen. Almost invisible rays of light were refracted from the sky just like that. Those rays of light flashed through the air and all gathered on Cloud Master's doppelganger. Then they disappeared without a trace. However, what kind of eyesight did Chu Yang and the others have? At this moment, they were all completely focused. Although those rays of light appeared and disappeared in an extremely short period of time, everyone could still see them clearly. These thin rays of light all had a faint blood-red color. That was myriad holy true spirit. Mo Tianji's expression became even more serious. The true intention of Cloud Master's doppelganger's wave of his hand was obvious. He was summoning the true spirits back. The tens of millions of myriad holy true spirits that everyone had just killed were originally slowly dissipating in this space. However, at this moment, they had all gathered on Cloud Master's doppelganger. Cloud Master's doppelganger stood in the air and stretched out his arms. As the dense rays of myriad holy true spirit entered his body, an extremely intoxicated expression appeared on his face. It was as if this was a kind of supreme enjoyment. Then, a gust of wind suddenly blew in the valley. In the air, Cloud Master's doppelganger's clothes fluttered. His hair was like seaweed in a tsunami, swaying violently and dancing wildly. In the next moment, his eyes suddenly emitted an extremely evil light. A pair of hands slowly reached out toward everyone in front of him and grabbed. However, his posture also seemed as if he wanted to embrace the entire world. This was an extremely disharmonious and contradictory feeling. At the same time, everyone felt that their extremely stable divine souls had actually started to loosen a little. It was as if they were being forcefully pulled by some kind of external force that could not be resisted. Vaguely, there were actually signs of divine soul energy seeping out. The other party's grab was strange and unpredictable. It could actually directly shake one's divine soul and seize one's spiritual energy. Such might was truly shocking, terrifying, and world-shocking. Everyone, be careful. Chu Yang shouted and gave Mo Tianji a look. Then he merged with the tribulation sword and soared into the air. What harm was there in slaughtering the entire world in one move without holding back? The ultimate sword technique. The sword light rushed toward Cloud Master's doppelganger like a shooting star. It arrived in a flash. A hint of mockery flashed across Cloud Master's eyes. He slowly reached out a hand and actually grabbed the tribulation sword that was moving as fast as lightning. Then he flung it out. Chu Yang, who was caught off guard, was flung out pathetically along with his sword. Once he was flung out, he actually flew more than tens of thousands of feet away. His momentum was still unknown. With a loud boom, he smashed into the mountain that had been reinforced by the Great Nebula Locking Array. Stone chips flew everywhere. A huge hole was smashed into this mountain that had been reinforced by the array for millions of years. Chu Yang's body quickly flipped over and jumped up from the pile of stone chips. There was actually blood flowing from the corners of his mouth. Just this one strike was enough to shock everyone and intimidate everyone. Everyone was clear about Chu Yang's cultivation level. He was undoubtedly one of the best among them. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was the best among them. However, even with such a cultivation level, the other party had sent him flying with just a simple wave of his hand. It was just a simple sweep of his palm. In the process of being sent flying, he couldn't even dissipate the momentum or stabilize himself. It was only until he finally crashed into the wall. Wasn't this person's cultivation a little too terrifying? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.